Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players, uncover their stories, and discover what makes them tick. If you love guitar, music, and the backstory of people's lives, stick around. You're in the right place. The Be Fulfilled Journal helps you be more honest with yourself and with others and be more open to handling things you've avoided dealing with for years. It's a 12-week online and journal program that helps you identify and eliminate things you do that are causing you stress and live in more gratitude and joy. It was actually developed by a long-term friend of mine who got sober in 2008, and he's put together a great deal just for my listeners. You get the 300-page hardcover journal and access to the 12-week video program online, plus free shipping, plus membership in a private Facebook support group with others going through the program, plus a 5-day mini course showing you how to let go of stuff that's draining your energy, plus a 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. To start your journey and get all the bonuses, go to BeFulfilledJournal.com/ELG. That's BeFulfilledJournal.com/ELG. Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. We have a great guest today. We're with Greg Suran. I've been trying to get with Greg for a long time. He's a high demand, and I had to pay him gobs of money to come on the show. So we're with Greg. So he's a great guy, and we're gonna have a great conversation. Greg is the quintessential sideman. He's originally from Chicago, and he's been touring and recording professionally for over 20 years, primarily in LA. He's currently the guitarist for the B-52’s, and he's held that gig since 2012. He held gigs for a really long time because he's good and punctual and a good guy to hang out with and a great player. And he's also a guitarist in the house band for the iconic TV show American Idol on ABC. And if you are a millennial, then you know that that's the only way people become famous and successful is on American Idol. So please pay attention. Greg moved to LA in 2002 upon being hired to play guitar for the Goo Goo Dolls. In addition to touring, he was working frequently as a session guitarist with producers Rob Cavallo. Did I pronounce that right? It's Cavallo.
Yeah, Cavallo.
And John Fields. After leaving the Goo Goo Dolls in 2006, Greg moved on to tour and or record with a very long list of well-known artists such as Jewel, Joe Walsh, the B-52’s, Don Felder, Five for Fighting, Avril Lavigne, Liz Phair, Colbie Caillat, and what was that woman in
Mylène Farmer, big French artist that nobody in the States would know, but huge in France.
And she plays out like 80,000 seat stadiums. We're like very ethnocentric here, man. We're just like, we don't know anything outside of, and it's even worse if you're like me from New York City, because maybe you don't know anything like outside of Jersey and California and like Texas and Florida. And Chicago. Greg studied classical guitar at Northwestern University under Ann Waller. After graduating, he was involved in the Chicago rock scene in the 90s, and he eventually signed a record deal with DreamWorks and DreamWorks Records in 98 with his band Cupcakes. Cupcakes recorded their album in London at the famous Townhouse Studios with Stephen Street, who produced the Smiths, Blur, and the Cranberries, I should say. After the group disbanded in late 2000, he joined the influential indie and emo rock band called Sunny Day Real Estate on the Rising Tide tour until moving to LA a few years later. He released his first solo album called Augmentation last year, or in 2017 rather. He's currently living back in Chicago, but he still works frequently in LA. Greg, thanks so much for your time, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, no worries. Great to be here, Craig.
Like 5 people have referred me to you, so you're the man.
That's surprising and amazing.
Hey man, what happened with Cupcakes? Because you guys got signed to a major label, and they sent you to London to record at a great studio with a great producer, so they were willing to sink a fair amount of money into you. What happened?
Yeah, so that was back in the 90s when the music business was, really, really different. There were huge budgets for new signings. That was a possibility. So Cupcakes was a band I started with the singer. His name is Preston Graves, and he was just this amazingly talented singer, like really big, strong voice and very, kind of like just enigmatic on stage, and really you couldn't take your eyes off him. You either loved him or hated him, but he had this thing. And so we started this band and eventually got like filled out the band with Matt Walker, who was the drummer of the Smashing Pumpkins at the time, and his brother Solomon Snyder. And yeah, it was just this band we started, and it was one of those things where we started doing shows, and literally, I think after our fourth show, we had a record deal. It was really fast. Chicago was kind of hot at the time, you know, like the Smashing Pumpkins, Liz Phair, Urge Overkill, or other bands like Triple Fast Action, and all these people getting signed. So there was a lot of focus on the city, and we signed one of these huge record deals. It was insane. We had 4 labels like going after us. It was one of those kind of things
God, like if you had to write the script, like the wish list, that would have been it.
Yeah. And I had been touring probably for like 6-7 years prior to that anyway, with different bands. And I actually got hired by this band kind of like who had a major label deal from Tucson called Machines of Living Grace. So I had a little taste of it, you know, the touring world and the major label world, but man, it was pretty nuts. Like we played the show, we got a lawyer. We didn't even have a manager. I was kind of doing some of those duties along with the drummer, Matt. And, we got flown out to LA, and it was just nuts. We had DreamWorks interested. We had American Records, Rick Rubin's label.
Wow.
At Interscope, and at the time A&M, which is no longer around. Actually, a lot of those labels aren't around. But yeah, so we had those 4 labels. They flew us out. They put us up at the Sofitel right across from Beverly Center. So we're staying. I think we stayed for like a week in LA. We're staying at this fancy hotel. We're having meetings with like, actually the day we arrived, man, Rick Rubin picked us up in his Rolls Royce.
That is nuts, man. To take you to a concert?
Yeah. To see that. You remember that band, The Prodigy, the Firestarter? That was like,
yeah. I'm your Firestarter. Yeah.
We're like breaking big, like around that time. This is probably like 97 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a while ago, but
I'm Rick Rubin and I'm your limo driver.
Dude, us up at our hotel, the 4 of us, and he's like, yeah, we're going to go. I forget where the concert was, but it was in the city. It was like Hollywood or something like that. So he picks us up and he's like, yeah, we're going to meet my friend at the show. So we pull up to the concert. We're in this Bentley, and we pull up to the curb, and his friend was Ben Stiller. I'm like, holy shit, it's freaking Ben Stiller. And there we are, we're, watching the concert. So that was surreal. And then the next day we had this meeting with the DreamWorks brass, and it was like Mo Austin, who I believe signed Frank Sinatra when he was with Warner Brothers, Michael Austin, his son, who's a big guy, Michael Goldstone, who signed all these big bands, like I think like Rage Against the Machine, Lenny Waronker,
holy smokes.
All these people in this big boardroom kind of meeting room kind of thing.
Who is paying the bill for you for the
split between the labels?
Yeah, that's what they do. They just
like
that's so nutty.
Yeah, it was wild. So anyway, like later that we have the big meeting with DreamWorks, and like Mo Austin's like, hey, so have you guys ever been to Malibu? And I go, no, man, we haven't really been to LA much. And he goes, oh, well, I'm going to put you up at my beach house in Malibu for the day. And he's like literally sent his private chef to the beach house.
Oh, my God.
Just like the 4 of us knuckleheads, like hanging out at this like insane thing on the beach, this like mansion on the beach, and with a private chef, like fridge full of beer and food. And, and then the next day we're meeting with Tom Whalley and Jimmy Iovine at Interscope.
From Interscope, yeah.
Like literally it's just the 2 of them and us in like a meeting room, just like talking about how they're going to make us huge. And, and so anyway, we did sign with DreamWorks, and we continued to write. We had this big record deal. Like, it was probably like worth $1 million, if you can believe that. Like if you add up all the things, like the recording fund that we got allotted, and then we had like a gear, like fund, like an amount of money for gear, an amount of money to kind of like a stipend to live off of, and then like a video budget. And then, like if you add that all up, it probably is like pushing $1 million or something like that. It was nuts.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. This is money that they advance you that's going to be paid back from royalties of record sales.
The old model of the music business.
Wow, that is scary, man.
Yeah. It was a trip. Like, and there was a big buzz about us around the city. I mean, obviously nobody knew anything about us anywhere outside of the city, but it was very intense. And I was pretty young. I think I was like 25 at the time. And, it was a big deal. Like this is my dream, like, big record deal, my own band, the whole thing. And we did a record in London. We were there for like 3.5 months working with the incredible Stephen Street.
3.5 months?
Yeah, it was insane. Yeah, think about the money we're
Oh
talking about.
my God, that's crazy, man.
We shipped our gear over to London. Like I shipped my amps and my guitars. I even shipped this like portable recording thing that was kind of like in this rack. It was like this Akai DR4 thing that I would do a lot of songwriting on. And like we even shipped that. It was just nuts. And yeah, we like did pre-production, we did the recording, we did the mixing, we did everything there. We were at, like I said, the Townhouse Studios, which is historic. That's where Queen recorded all their big albums, I believe, like Genesis. I mean, you name it. It was crazy. And we were living in these like little like flat apartments above the studio. It was nuts, man.
You each had your own apartment?
No, we were all living like in this one big thing that had like 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, something like that. And, you know, it was intense. It was kind of like, wow, this is our big shot, you know? Ultimately, the record, well, here's the thing that like, we didn't get along, the singer and I, very well.
Oh, you and Preston Graves.
Yeah.
With an enigmatic personality.
Yeah. We're very, but you know, he had like, and I don't know, he's much better. We're actually pretty cool with each other now. We stay in touch, but, he was a pretty violent guy, and he would have these massive anger explosions, and we would fight a lot. And at one point in the studio while recording the record, we were in the live room, full band, recording something, and I made some suggestion like, yeah, I don't know, man, I think we should like do this thing or that part or whatever. And you know, he was like, "Fuck you, man!" And this thing, and he literally picked up the Stratocaster that my dad bought for me when I was in high school, and he smashed it to pieces in the studio. And then he started running after me to like literally kill me. And this guy has like superhuman strength. He was like built like an ox, and he was like a bouncer at these clubs in Chicago. So he was like this intense dude, right? So I'm literally like, he's going to kill me. So I start running the studio security guy, this big dude, Newton, who was awesome. I had to tackle Preston while I was running out the front trying to like run away from him as he was trying to kill me. So he tackles him, and it's a big problem. Like the producer, Steven's like, "Oh my God, what's going on here?" So they call our A&R person, Beth, like, "Hey, we got big problems." So she had to fly out to London. I mean, it was a mess, man. And so I think really like our fate was sealed right then and there, the amount of fighting we did, and like an event like that, to have that happen. You know, it was pretty intense. So I don't think we ever really had a shot. We went through the motions. We finished the record. But in the end, I think the label was just like, man, these guys, they just can't figure it out. And ultimately,
wow.
we did a record, which I'm very proud of. I think it's a really cool record.
What's the record called?
It's just called Cupcakes, self-titled. And it was released in the year 2000 on DreamWorks. I mean, we were dropped, I think, like 3 months after it was released. I think they were just waiting to drop us.
I'm sure they didn't throw $1 at promo at it after all that.
No, like, there were certain contractual things they had to do, so that was done. But yeah, man, we just couldn't keep it together. And you know, I definitely take some responsibility for my part in that. I mean, I was definitely feeling the pressure to like, okay, we got to make this great record. This is like the whole thing. I think even Preston, if someone asked him, I think he would admit that he probably had the lion's share of that. I think he was really dealing with some crazy stuff. I think the pressure really got to him, and you know, it just went downhill. But man, did I learn a lot from that.
Okay, so I have a bunch of questions. Thanks for sharing that. That was really cool and interesting. So first question, obviously, that comes to mind, and you don't even have to answer it, or you don't have to answer it honestly even. Was there like drugs and alcohol involved?
No, it's Preston. He smoked weed stuff, but no, it wasn't that. He just
smoking weed does not make you fucking rage.
It was like not smoking weed, but
wow.
No, there was nothing like that.
Okay, so okay, few things. They found you after like your 4th gig.
Yeah,
were they just like have guys scouting in the club? Were you?
No, so we had recorded this like EP. And it was pretty cool. It was pretty interesting stuff. And it started kind of making the rounds. There was a little buzz going around Chicago. Matt, our drummer, he had some connections to some people just because he was playing. I knew a few people too, but Matt like was really hooked, like dialed in with like the Smashing Pumpkins and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
So he knew Butch Vig.
Wow.
And because Butch had produced Siamese Dream, the Pumpkins record.
Sure.
So, and Butch is also from the Midwest. He's from Wisconsin. So he's he kind of like is aware of what was going on in Chicago. But anyway, I think Butch passed our EP along to his girlfriend at the time, Beth, who ultimately was the one who signed us because she was A&R for DreamWorks. But I think that's probably where it started. But, Chicago, there were just tons of people going out and hearing bands and like trying to get a feel for like, oh, this is the next big band out of Chicago. There was a lot of that going on too.
Yeah, but to do that after 4 gigs, that's like
no, it was nuts.
That's crazy, man. Okay,
our first show sold out at the Double Door, which is this like whatever 700 capacity place, I think, something like that. We had a lot of buzz
from this EP.
Yeah, from the EP, and just all 4 of us in the band had been involved in other things locally that were kind of like well known, and so I think there was interest. I think people were curious, and our singer Preston was amazing at promoting us locally. Like I said, he worked at all these bars, so he'd say these things like, "I'm in this band, Cupcakes. We're the best band in the world. Wait till you see it. You're not going to believe it." He was that guy, and
it's like nope. It's so funny because that's so the antithesis of like 99% of the musicians.
Oh yeah, no, this dude Preston, he does not lack in confidence.
Yeah, that's so funny. Wow. Okay, so you get this thing after the 4th deal. Do they? When they invest money in you guys, there's obviously no kind of you don't personally guarantee this, then, or do you?
No, but
because it's a loan essentially. Like when you sign a mortgage,
it's not like that.
No,
like if they drop you, and if you don't sell any records, that loan is forgiven.
It's wiped.
Yeah, but we had a thing. We had this deal because we had all this competition, like a bidding war between these labels. We were able to kind of dictate some terms, and one of them was that we had like a 3-firm record deal with DreamWorks, and all these stipulations. Like if they dropped us, they had to buy us out of like the 2 records. There were all these things going on with it. But so. We were a train wreck as a band in terms of like the labels just looking at us like these guys are insane and, this is like a mess. So they wanted to get out of it. So ultimately when our lawyer was like, yeah, I think, they're willing to drop the contract. At this point, I was so affected by that whole process and the Preston thing that I was so ready to be done with it. I'm like, yes, let them drop us, please. And I'm thinking like, okay, cool. They have to buy us out.
They're cut you a check. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was supposed to be like around $1.5 million, man. Like we're talking some serious money, right? Not that I was really expecting that full amount would happen, but I was like, oh, we're going to get something. But I think their position was like, yeah, we're not going to pay that. And I asked our lawyer like, hey man, can we go after them? He's like, you want me to sue DreamWorks? I'm not doing that.
Yeah, right. The size of the legal team you'd need that you'd need more than $1.5 million in legal fees, easy to fight them.
Even though I have the contract, it's in the contract. But I tried to talk to other lawyers, and they're like, nah, man, that's we're not taking that case. So ultimately, I think this was by design, and the label said, okay, listen, you guys, because we I think accrued some debt from like the touring and stuff. We did a little bit of touring. So we probably had like $50,000-$60,000 of debt and something like that. And they're like, listen, and we were incorporated as a band, like an LLC. Sure. So technically, really, I think there was some liability, even though it was limited. I think we had some liability. So they said, okay, listen, how about this? You sign this release saying that we don't owe you anything more. We'll pay your debt.
Okay.
And for all 4 of us, I think at that point, it'd been like a 3-4 year experience with the band, and it was just such a huge event in our lives. Yeah. It was draining, and I think we're all like, okay, cool, we can just clean slate, wash our hands of this whole thing, and that's kind of what happened. And that really, for me, that was kind of like it was the first point in my life where I said, I'm done with trying to be in a band. I'm just done.
Really?
So, yeah.
So talk about, you said you learned a lot. Talk about that. What were the top?
Well, I learned about the business, man. For one, I learned how fucking cutthroat it is. And, these people you meet, they're so nice, and they're like, oh, you're going to be huge, and you feel like you're buddies. And, not to say I met a lot of great people at DreamWorks, and actually Beth was very instrumental in the second phase of my career. She was really helpful, and she's a wonderful person. But the business is very unforgiving, man, when it comes time to like, okay, it's, the personal part just goes out the window. And so I kind of learned like, oh, wow, this is not a game. These people are playing, for real. And was very eye-opening. And also I realized my whole life I was just trying to, I never really wanted to do this like sideman thing. That was never really like my career path. I always wanted to be in a band. I always wanted to make music, just be creative. And, but that Cupcakes experience had been so intense. And I think I just said to myself, man, I just never want to go through that again. And that's kind of when I started thinking like, I just want to play guitar. I don't want to like, go work at a flower shop or something like that. Like I want to play guitar. How do I keep doing that? And that's kind of when I started brainstorming about how to like do this whole sideman thing. But yeah, I mean, I think it took that process, the thing for me to get to that point to make that realization, And
it's very unfair because you're all kids too. And
oh yeah,
you have no coping skills. You have no life training at that point. Is really hard to get that worked out. It's almost miraculous for those people that do somehow get it worked out.
Yeah, I think a lot of luck is involved. I mean,
yes.
In terms of the timing with that, I really feel like we were the kind of band that we were destined to be like a huge rock band. I really felt that. And I think in hindsight, had a couple things gone a different way. Like for one, if we were able to get along better, we didn't really have the hit song. And obviously that's like the biggest thing for a new band. But I feel like that wasn't our thing anyway. I think we were kind of developing. And had we been able to like do our second record and our third record, I think we would have been one of those bands kind of like Muse or something like that. We were heavy, but we were kind of artsy too. Like kind of like a mixture between like, I don't know, Queen and David Bowie and like, heavy stuff. And, there was some Radiohead in there, but like we were kind of like doing our thing before Radiohead was a thing. I'm not saying we're like Radiohead.
No, don't worry about it. We're just like, we started Radiohead.
Influence on Radiohead. No. But I guess what I'm saying is that like it was at that time in the 90s where rock bands were realizing, okay, you can do things besides just play like Zeppelin riffs, like, or rock and roll riffs. Like you could be more influenced by bands like Kraftwerk or, Can, and there were other, artsy influences on music going on,
It's funny. I was listening to some, reading about television because I was trying to get, the band. Yeah. I'm trying to get Richard Lloyd on the show, and,
amazing.
They were influenced a lot by a lot, Can, a lot of the German.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And actually, I play with the B-52’s now. And by the way, it's the original guitar player of the B-52’s, who is no longer with us. Today is his birthday. I'm not sure how old he would have been, but Ricky Wilson, was very good friends with Tom Verlaine.
Really?
Yeah. And television, played a lot in New York City. And Tom was a huge fan of Ricky's guitar playing and vice versa.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, huge. That's like television's a band that a lot of, I don't know, guys that do, I guess what I do, they're not as like much on the radar, but what a great band.
Oh, man.
Are playing. Yeah.
Really. There was certain bands of that era, like, that kind of stuff is what to me led to stuff like I had, Jamie West Orm from the Fix on the show.
Yeah. We did some shows with the Fix. He's awesome.
Oh, great player, man. Let me tell you the weirdest thing. And this has happened since I've done this show. I mean, it's like, gives me goosebumps with it. So I'm talking to him and, he goes, "Hey, I'm coming to the States." He goes, you're in Florida, right? I'm like, yeah. He goes, "I'm coming to Clearwater. Is that near?" I'm like, that's like 30 minutes away. I go there all the time. Like he has one date. It's in Clearwater and it's 3 weeks after our interview. How nutty is that? I mean, it was, so I got to see him play. Oh my God.
Great tone. Those parts are amazing. Like I always love the Fix.
Really good.
We did like 5-6 shows with them with the B-52’s last few years.
Oh, really? Yeah. And then, but he's then like, so television led to stuff like, the Fix and the Police kind of, I think, that was the, sort of the progression.
Yeah. That was that whole New York, like CBGB.
Right. Talking Heads.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Bees were part of that scene.
Yes.
They were one of those bands that was, the Ramones, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's cool, man. Yeah. Man, well, thank you for talking about it. That was really interesting.
Yeah, sorry. It's funny. Like, I don't think about that time that much, but that was like a huge time in my life. Very anxiety filled, very stressful, exciting too. I mean, my first time to London, I was like living there. It was crazy. I was just a kid. It was awesome.
For 3.5 months in a big palace. What was, you said that it was a lot of anxiety. What was the anxiety coming from?
Obviously that relationship with Preston was really troubling. He was going through some stuff too. I don't fully blame him. I think he has his demons, and I'm compassionate about it. I sympathize with him about it. We all have our stuff like that. Absolutely, man. But he was, I remember he was really, really aggressive towards my girlfriend, like mean. And he was just like, he was kind of a monster, to be honest. In other ways, he was great. Like, it's hard to describe. Like, we were such good friends. Yeah. But he could really turn and be like really, truly evil in some ways, like at the time. And again, we were kids, but he was dealing with some stuff, and he was turning it on me and really directing it at me. And it was tough, man. It was like being bullied, it was intense stuff to deal with, all the while, like with the pressure of like, this is the biggest opportunity of my lifetime. Yeah. And I was kind of like the guy who wrote the music in the band, and Preston wrote the lyrics, and some stuff we did as a band, obviously, like Matt and Saul would contribute, of course. But like a lot of the times I would be the one writing like music, like a music bed, like a music track, and giving it to Preston and saying like, hey man, what do you think of this? You got anything on this? And like, that was our process. Yeah. So I was definitely feeling a lot of pressure, as well as like this personal situation. And literally there were times where I'm like, I think Preston's going to kill me. I think he's literally going to kill me. Yeah. That's not fun, man. Yeah, that's not. And and as you know, now though, by the way, what's that? We're cool with each other now, by the way. But yeah. Is he in the music business now? Yeah, he records. He lives in Austin, Texas. He's just, doing his thing. Yeah. It's tough. Sometimes you have a tendency, all of us as people, you pick on the ones you care about the most. Oh, it was out of love, man. I realized that. Like, we were very close. And like I said, he was dealing with some demons, and it wasn't drug or alcohol related. It was just emotional stuff, and I think he was feeling the pressure and the anxiety, and that's how he coped. That's how he coped with it. Yeah, that makes sense, man. That's what I'm saying. When you're young, it's just, you don't have the tools to deal with that, man. It's just really tough. Dude, literally like Stephen Street, the producer, and the label, and the people running the studio, they're like, what the fuck is wrong with these guys? Like, they've never seen anything like this. Like, the dude literally smashed my guitar to pieces in the studio and was chasing me around the studio. Well, that's really hurtful, because your dad got you the guitar, man. That is really. And I wanted to kill him right back. Right. Physically, there was no way I could do that. Yeah. No, I get it. But that's really a hurtful thing to do, because as it is, it's a guitar that you obviously cared enough about to send that guitar to London and not another guitar. You know what I mean? And then your dad gave. It was this Japanese 60s reissue Strat, that they made in the late 80s. Yeah. So it was, and which now would have been actually kind of worth something, because they're kind of sought after. Yeah, they are. I love that guitar, and the neck was saved. The neck didn't crack in half, just the body. So I actually put a different body on it and tried to make it back into what it's still not the same. That guitar's never been the same since. Man. Well, yeah, it was heavy, man. Like, seriously, we were such a bunch of knuckleheads. Like, we screwed that up so bad. It's funny. I've talked to, do you know, Brian in Austin? I'm trying to think of his last name. Man, I'm having a brain fart. He's a shredder. He played with David Lee Roth. Oh, okay, cool. Brian, I can't think of his last name, but his quote was, I thought, he got signed to a major label. He goes, I thought my life was set once I got signed to a major label. It was the worst thing that ever happened to me. So, I mean, I hear these stories. They're not uncommon. It's just 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You just don't know how the shit's going to play out. Yeah. And, back then, that was kind of the only way to make it. Like, you had to get a major label deal. Not to say that you couldn't be an indie rock band and make your mark there, but it wasn't as apparent back then. Yeah. By and large, there was no social media. You couldn't do your own promotion, even if you wanted to. No, that seemed like the only way to go about it to me. I learned later there were other ways to go about it, but at the time that was kind of like the only thing I thought you could do. But I'm very, very grateful that I had that experience. Though. Sure. Well, man, thank you for sharing that. So after that, is that what you said? Hey, I'm getting out of Chicago. I want to go to LA and just become a session guy. Well, so the band broke up like in 2000. Our record got released. That I went through that whole thing, and then. Right away, I actually was able to go. I think it was like a 2-week lag, and I hooked up with the band Sunny Day Real Estate. Yeah. For those who don't know, they were this amazing band. But the Foo Fighters have a relationship with them. Like the drummer and the bass player, Nate Mendel, William Goldsmith, they were the original Foo Fighters rhythm section. Yeah. And Nate's still with the band. He's still a good friend of mine. And William is eventually left, and Taylor Hawkins and the whole thing. Yeah. But so anyway, I joined that band for a tour, basically. So it was like a year of touring. And that was just kind of like an immediate, that I had a mutual friend of the band. The bass player is a good friend of mine. He's like, hey, you know, they need a guitar player and a guy who can play some keyboards. And at the time, I'm like, dude, I have no money. I have nothing to do. My band just broke up. We got dropped. So I did that right away. Did that tour, and then that band broke up. But there were no fights or anything like that.
No, I was just about to say, what was the story on that?
It was all cool. It just the band broke up like a year later. So now it's like 2001. My girlfriend that I lived with, she broke up with me.
Oh man, you're headed for dark days now. 2001's bad for you.
My dad had to have quadruple bypass surgery. He almost died.
God.
He's still with us, thankfully. But
thank goodness.
It was this intense time where I'm like, it just felt like I lost kind of like everything that was important to me. And I was kind of going through this weird time, and I just, you know, it was like one of these things where I thought to myself, like, I need to do something. I need to change something in my life. I think I was, at the time, I was like maybe 29, 30. Yeah, I was like 30 at this point. And I'm like, I just got to do something different. And I thought, you know, maybe I need to like move to LA, but I never wanted, like, I didn't like that idea of just like moving to LA without a job or anything like that. I was pretty broke. So I'm like, well, maybe I can get a job. So I called Beth from DreamWorks and I'm like, hey, listen, I kind of want to do this sideman thing. I think I just want to try to get a gig. And she goes, you know, she was great, man. She goes, you know, I think you could really do this. You know, you're a talented musician. I think you have the temperament for it. Let me make some phone calls. And so she kind of called around and I think talked to some managers and found out that the Goo Goo Dolls were auditioning guitar players. And so this was like sometime in 2001. So I heard about that and I kind of like tried to kind of like get my name in on the audition. So ultimately, you've probably heard this guy's name before from other dudes you've talked to in LA, but his name was Barry Squire. So Beth, she talked to me.
Is he still around?
I'm sure he is. Yeah. I mean, this is the only one thing I ever did for Barry.
I wonder if he still does it. I'd like to get him on the show because I've heard his name 50 times at least.
Yeah. He was the guy for sure. I mean, you know, he probably still does a lot of that stuff, but so basically I didn't like really go through Barry to start it. It was more like my friend Beth was kind of like trying to like sniff around on my behalf, and Barry was handling the Goo Goo Dolls audition. So I had to talk to Barry. I talked to Barry and I'm like, yeah, man, I'd love to audition. He's like, yeah, well, I already got like 12 guys on the list and they're all LA based. You're in Chicago. You know, they're looking for an LA guy. And I just kind of pleaded with him, like, man, just get me on the list. Like, I'll fly out, I'll pay my own way. And like, if I get the gig, I'll move to LA. And he's like, all right. And then I had like, I think I reached out to management and told them like, hey, listen, you know, I really want to audition, the whole thing. So it's kind of like the only time in my life where I really like hustled, you know what I mean?
Well, credit to you for even calling Beth up because that took some balls after what happened. When you must have had a relationship with her. Yeah, I mean, like a course, you know, a professional.
Because I think she knew that I was trying to like get this to work. Yeah. You know, and I think she knew that, you know, my heart was in it and that I was really, you know, doing whatever I could. And it was just kind of a bad situation. Yeah. So, and you know, she's just a cool person, man. And she really helped me out at a time where like I needed someone to kind of give me a break, you know, at this point.
I give you a lot of credit for making that call. Cause it's, you know, I'm okay more with it now. I've always struggled asking people for help and I'm stupid for it. I didn't know a long story anyway, but this is about you, not me. So, but yeah, that's really cool that you did that.
Yeah, man, she was great. And, in the end I was able to get the audition and, it was nuts. They gave, you know, the typical audition thing where you have to learn like 5 songs and, I had to learn like a mandolin part for the song Iris, the whole deal. And I really wanted the gig, man, because it wasn't like I was a huge fan of their music at the time, but I didn't like dislike it. I loved the band years ago, like when they were sort of like this weird sort of metal punk rock band. Yeah. Like I actually saw them when I was in college and I loved them back then. And I just kind of lost track of them and they became this huge, like they had the song Name was out and Iris had already come out. And it was kind of like after their Dizzy Up the Girl tour and they were doing their next, you know, big record. But I was like, man, they're, you know, I used to really dig those guys and that would be cool. And wow, you know, they're a big band. It would be probably pay some money, you know?
Yeah. Well, you needed a gig, man, for sure.
Right. I wanted to do something and I learned the songs and I flew out and I did my audition, and yeah, man, it worked out. Actually, Johnny was really cool. Like, we played like 2 songs, and I think halfway through the second song, he just stopped me, and I'm like, oh shit, I guess I'm not getting this. They're just gonna like bring the next dude in or whatever. And he goes, well, man, so you got the job if you want it.
Wow. How did you feel?
Yeah, he was really cool, man. I think it just kind of worked out, and it just like that, literally my life changed. And I moved to LA a couple months later, and that was January of 2002. And then I was on my path to that whole sideman thing.
So, so you were going through a bad run. Sunny Day Real Estate broke up. Your girlfriend broke up with you, and then you had this medical or health issue with your dad.
Yeah.
Then you went and made that call and started a series of events and got this gig. Out of that experience, did you get it, like learn anything, or did something trigger to you that said, this happened, this is what I learned here, and let me put it to good use next time?
Yeah, well, clearly at this point I was starting to realize that one thing leads to another. And these relationships that you have early on, like, you may think like, oh, well, they're finite, they have a beginning and they have an end, and then you move on to the next thing. And I don't think that's how it works. I think there are lines that connect all of these events in our lives. And, with Beth, had I not called Beth, like you said, the Goo Goo thing would have never happened. And I probably would have been in Chicago this whole time, and who knows, maybe teaching guitar lessons or whatever. But like, not that there's anything wrong with that. But
no,
you have to put yourself out there. I realize that. You have to make an effort. No one's just going to discover you. Never works like that, or at least in my experience.
No, it never does that. It never works like that.
People, I don't know. But
I mean, that's like you hear these stories of so-and-so is doing this, and someone happened to be at the show because they were visiting their nephew. I mean, like these real remote. But by and large, I think, and as a guy who's been in a primarily sales-ish capacity for the last 30 years, man, that's how you have to turn the key to start the engine for the most part.
You do. And then you have to, be willing to take a chance and not be afraid, like, oh, I don't know if, I'll measure up against these LA guys, or I don't know if whatever, like, or it could be embarrassing, or I might not get the gig. And then on my confidence, you just can't think like that. You just have to go and do it. And I mean, really at that point, I just kind of felt like I had nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And again, I never really had any intention of moving to LA, like throughout my life. It was just one of those like, well, there's an opportunity there. I can audition. If I get the job, then I'll move to LA. So
right.
I'm one of the, I guess lucky ones in that sense that I moved to LA with a pretty big gig.
Yeah, definitely.
I literally spent 0 days in LA looking for a gig. It just, there it was. I got off the plane and I had my job. I was very lucky in that sense.
I just want to summarize that because those are really good lessons in general. You realize one thing leads to another. That's that whole movie. You ever see that movie Slumdog Millionaire?
Oh, yeah. I actually never saw it all the way through, but I'm familiar.
Yeah, it's cool. It's like he has all these things that happen to him in his life, which are really infinitesimal, remote, in passing events, and they wind up like really changing his life and saving his life and getting him a lot of money. You got to put yourself out there, and you have to be willing to take a risk. Yeah,
I think you do. I mean, it was the same thing with, starting the band Cupcakes. I had to be willing to, when I started that band, when I was working on stuff with that band, I think I had moved in with my dad because I wanted to write music. And so I got all this recording equipment, and I just started writing for like a year. And, I didn't have much of a social life at the time. I was really focused. I'm like, I'm going to work at this thing. I'm going to try to get somewhere with it. And, it paid off, but it really takes having to make the effort and take a risk and take a chance on yourself. And, with no guarantee of any success.
No, that's yeah.
This kind of work, like musicians, artists, there is no guarantee of any kind of success.
There's no guarantee of any success outside of that either. Just FYI, I've been running a business 20 something years. There's no.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like if you go to med school, chances are you're going to be a doctor.
Yeah. Well, there's a formula. Like first you do this, then you go that, and then internship and residence. Yeah. There's no
med school because I like the sound of that.
Yeah. There you go. That's next. Dr. Suran. Dr. Suran.
Well, that's my father's name, actually.
Oh, is your dad a doctor?
He is.
That's really cool.
He's a psychologist. But yeah.
Oh, man. You're lucky you're really not messed up. You know, they said like the cobbler's kids never have any shoes. So they always say with like psychology. Who did I talk to? Steph Burns. His dad is a psychiatrist. Oh. Yeah, that's so funny. The guy was just talking about.
My mom is too.
Oh, my God. You had double whammy, man. Oh, my God.
It's the family business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're a psychologist of music, so you do the same thing for others. Make them feel good, man. Man, for each of these people, artists, let's talk about how you got the gig and if there's like a cool or interesting story about working with them. And let's start with your current gig, the B-52’s, and you've been doing that since 2012.
Okay, so B-52’s, I think you're going to ask me about one of these other artists, but so I won't mention their name at this point. But I was just getting off the road with one of these artists. Yeah. Okay, long tour, did a long tour, literally finished the tour, got back to my house in LA. And I'm just chilling out, and I get a phone call from my buddy Paul, who is the keyboard player in the B-52’s. And I knew Paul, and through Paul, I knew Sterling Campbell, the drummer, famous, awesome drummer, Sterling.
Wait a minute, Sterling Campbell played with like
Bowie.
Bowie, yeah. Didn't he do? Did he play with? He didn't play with Lou Reed. No, it's okay.
I don't think he's played with Lou, but
no, it was Mo. It was a woman, Mo something. I can't think of her name.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. But Sterling's played with like a lot of people, like a who's who. But anyway, they gave me a call. I literally just got home, and they're like, "Hey, man, where are you?" I'm like, "LA." And like, "What are you doing right now?" Like, "Are you doing anything?" I go, "No, I just got off the road." They're like, "Can you be in New York tonight?" And I'm like, I guess, what's up? And I was thinking, like, this is probably B-52’s related because they both played in the band. Paul was the keyboard player and Sterling the drummer. And yeah, man, they're like, okay, so Keith Strickland, who he wasn't the original guitar player, but he was the original drummer of the band. And when Ricky Wilson passed away in the 80s, Ricky became the guitar player in the B-52’s. And that was like the whole love shot.
You mean Keith?
Keith did, yes. Yeah. So Keith he moved from drums to guitar when Ricky passed away. Yeah, which is amazing. I mean, Keith's a really super talented guy.
Yeah.
And then that was like the whole Love Shack, like pop era of the B-52’s, right? So Keith had been the guitar player since, I want to say it was probably like 88 or something like that, 89, the whole, Cosmic Thing record and all that. And he had just retired from the band from touring, from the B-52’s. Okay. So they had this gig coming up, and I guess they had a guitar player to fill in for the gig, right? Some guy that they kind of knew or the band knew. The gig was coming up in San Diego like a week away or less. They started rehearsing with this guy, and apparently it really wasn't working out. And they're like, shit, we've got this gig coming up. We've got a whole like 18-song set to do, and we've got like 3 days. And this guitar player is not going to work, and Keith's not playing guitar in the band anymore. So they literally called me up. They're like, dude, we need you to fly to New York tonight so we can rehearse at 10 a.m. and rehearse the whole set. And I'm like, yeah, that's great, man. I can do that. But I had a gig on Thursday playing the Guitar Center sessions. You know that TV show?
No, but
well, it's like it was like a direct TV thing. This was with Joe Walsh, the artist that so I was playing with Joe at the time, and we had to film this big thing in LA. So this is like, let's just say this is like a Wednesday or Tuesday that they call me. The Walsh thing for the filming thing was Thursday morning. The B-52’s gig was Friday. So I'm like, I can get to New York, but I got to be back in LA at like 7 a.m. Thursday morning, no matter what, for this thing that we're filming. I'm like, okay, we'll do it, man. So management called me. They booked me a flight. Next thing I know, like literally they have a car picking me up at my house like 2 hours later.
Oh, wow. And you had just gotten back like that morning or the day before?
I came back from LAX.
Holy crap.
Literally, it was 2 hours after they called me, and there's a car picking me up to catch a flight that was going to, the time difference and all that, and the long 5-hour flight was going to get me in at like, midnight or something. And so literally in that time, I have to learn I have notes. I had to pack a bag. I had to like figure this out. I think I had like half an hour with my guitar to learn I had like 18 songs to learn.
Oh my God.
And the rehearsal was going to be 10 a.m. the next morning. And one thing about these B-52 songs, they are in crazy tunings. Some of the songs have only 5 strings on the guitar. The tunings are like the Rock Lobster tuning is like a low C, F, C, F, F, like crazy stuff, right?
Wow. Wow. Okay.
Like really, really interesting. You know, Ricky, the original guitar player, was really creative about coming up with these tunings and these things. So nothing is like rock and roll about it. Like the guitar playing in that band is very angular. It's very unique. There's definitely like a surf like element to it.
Yeah. Do you have a bunch of guitars for that set then that are different tunes?
Yeah. But at the time, I'm kind of like, okay, I just brought my favorite Telecaster and a little mini pedal board, and I'm like, I'll just retune for every song.
Sure. Oh my
just
god.
Person, you know what I mean?
Not too much pressure.
Dude, it was nuts. So the thing is, I had only about, like I said, half an hour. So I'm sitting down. My big thing was like, okay, just try to figure out the tunings on all these songs. I literally had like a half hour before the car was picking me up. So I have all 18 songs in an iTunes playlist, and I'm like, oh god, that sounds weird. And I'm trying to like figure it out. What's he doing there? And so I've just taken notes. And on the plane, I've got like my iPhone, and I'm like, writing notes on the arrangements, the whole thing. I get to the hotel at like midnight. I start working on the songs till like, probably 2-3 in the morning. And I'm like, I got to get some sleep. And so I slept like 2-3 hours. And next thing I know, there we are rehearsing. And I'm in New York City rehearsing with the B-52’s, like trying to play the whole set, and do it right. And it all worked out. It was great. I did my first gig. And like, I remember after the gig, I actually flew back to LA, did the Joe Walsh thing for the sessions. And then the next day I'm in San Diego and playing this gig with the Bees. It was like a private gig. And then I just remember Fred Schneider being like, hey, so, if you want to be in the band, we'd love to have you be our guitar player. And
you actually spoke a little bit like him, you had I like the inflections, man.
But you almost can't help it with Fred. It's like,
it's such a distinct voice that he has. Yeah.
But so it was pretty nuts, man. I had to learn those songs literally in like a couple hours. And, I had to read. The other thing about the songs that's crazy is, in addition to the tunings, nothing ever repeats 4 or 8 times. It's like you'll have a verse and the bars, it'll be like 17 bars. And then the chorus is like 8 bars. And then like the next verse is like 13 bars. And then it really weird arrangements. And I mean, they're amazing. But part of that, I think, is the way they write. Like Fred will be like, well, I've got this lyric. And Kate will say, oh, I have this lyric. And Cindy says, oh, I've got this other thing I want to sing. And they just arrange according to how they write their lyrics. Like that's my assumption.
That's amazing. The good thing about that is the melodies are so good there. It probably allowed you to, if you got a melody to track in your head, it does make it not easy, but a little easier.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like that typical thing of like having to memorize all those songs in a matter of like 2 days.
That's crazy, man.
It's pretty intense.
It's nuts. So San Diego, did you have anything after that? Like, did you eventually like collapse, get to like just go back home?
I just came home, and I think it was like Halloween, like the next day, and I dressed up in zombie makeup and like went to a party or something like that. But, yeah.
You must have felt like a zombie at that point, man.
Yeah, for real, man. It was nuts. It was a crazy days. Yeah. And actually that was at the time Joe Walsh was, he said he was suspending his tour. He was having some stuff going on like with his family. And so, the timing of it was amazing because the Joe gig was kind of ending, and literally like out of the blue, like I was not expecting this to happen. Like it's called about the B-52’s. And then next thing I know, they've got like a whole tour booked, and I'm back on the road with the B-52’s.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing, man. Dude, you got to be really on top of your shit to learn 18 songs in like a day or two. That's, pretty amazing. Or 30 minutes, whatever, but that's good for you, man.
Thanks.
Let's talk about Joe. There's like probably 8 to 10 guitar players that when I started this show, I said, man, if I get these guys on the show, I will really be amazed. I'll, just feel good. And he's obviously one of them. Oh, yeah. So tell me the Joe Walsh story. I mean, he's such a talented guy. I don't even think people realize. You go back to the old barnstorming stuff and you look at the credits. It's acoustic guitar, Joe Walsh, piano, Joe Walsh, electric guitar, slide guitar. I mean, in addition to doing all the writing. The guy,
he's a great singer too, man.
Incredible.
It's and like when you're working with him and just like rehearsing, whatever, you just hear that voice and you go, oh my God, there it is.
That's Joe Walsh.
It's so loud, and that his pitch is just like right on. I mean, he's got that weird timbre to his voice.
Yeah.
It's like, it's pretty amazing. Yeah. He is a force of nature. Yeah.
So how'd you get that gig? How long was it? And cool stories.
That was like a 2-year gig for me. Joe, you'll probably interview like 8 different guys who have played with Joe Walsh. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
He's had a lot of different bands over the years, a lot of different guitar players, and that's just kind of how Joe does it. He'll ride with like a band for a while, and then it's like, he changes it up.
Not as many as the number one artist I think that I've interviewed actually is Bonnie Raitt. I've interviewed more of her guitar players, and also Felder's had quite a lot of guitar players.
Yeah, well, I was Felder's guitar player for like
right.
6 years. Well, yeah, the thing with the Felder gig is I was like the main guitar player for most of those 6 years. I was one of Frank Time's subs to start.
Oh, Frank was in that gig.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know
He
that.
was probably in it as long as I was, but he was the principal guy for years, and then I took over for him. So I had like a lot of subs. Because the Don gig, it's one of those gigs like Fight for Fighting. Like I've been John's principal guitar player for like 12 years now, but you get subs. So there's like, you'll have 2 or 3 subs, like guys like Steve Feckety sub for me a bunch, Jason Orb sub for me in Fight for Fighting a bunch, and Felder. Yeah, there's a whole list of dudes. But I was his main guitar player for like 6 years.
Felder.
Yeah.
So I got Frank coming on here in like a week or 2 or 3 or something like that.
Yeah, Frank's awesome, man.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So, man, talk about Joe. How'd you get that gig?
I played with Joe for about 2 years. It came up because my buddy Drew Hester, who when I used to MD for Jewel, I hired Drew to play drums on some stuff that we were doing, and we were buddies. And Joe was looking for a new guitar player. He put out his first record in a long time called Analog Man.
Yeah.
And Drew kind of reached out to me like, hey man, I think you might be cool for this gig. And so I was, at the time, I think I'd just gotten back from France from my French gig, and I didn't really have anything on my plate at the moment. So I was pretty excited, man. Like the idea of, maybe playing with Joe. It was one of those things is like, okay, so you go over to Joe's house in the Hollywood Hills. By the way, it's the thing with Felder. Like, I think there's like a whole Eagles way of doing things.
You just go to their house.
Yeah, you go to their house. It's not like you go to like center staging or something like that and audition or like with a cattle call. Like you literally go to their house.
Kenny Loggins is the same way. You go to Kenny's house.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny because I played with Joe first, and then the Felder thing kind of overlapped with Joe for a minute. And it was like the same thing with Felder when I went over to his house. Like it was just funny. I'd never done that before to get a gig. So I drive over to Joe Walsh's house. Like use that, right? And Joe opens the door. Knocking your horn, sorry, I don't want to do my Joe impression. It's like
it's all good, man.
Insulting to Joe, but it's a trip. Joe answers the door, and there's all these like dogs running around, and like you go to his studio, and he just he wanted to sit down and play, and so he played me his new record that Jeff Lynn had produced, and it was awesome. Yeah. I'm like, wow, here I am listening to Joe's new record with Joe.
Was that so? Like, I know that you're not. When you're around enough people and you're in the industry, you don't get starstruck. But it had to be kind of weird. Like, I'm fucking sitting here with Joe Wall. Like as you're sitting there and you look across, and you're like, does that go through? Like,
yeah, it's a trip. I mean, for one, any kind of an audition thing is going to be a little nerve wracking because you're just like, oh man, like this, I'm being.
You're
right?
being evaluated. Yeah, it's totally nerve-wracking.
That's just a weird process. I think it's very unnatural. So I think more I was just kind of like, all right, just play well. And I don't think I had really prepared much of anything. It wasn't one of these like, here, learn these songs. It was like, just bring a guitar and come hang out with Joe. If memory serves, I think that's kind of how it went. But yeah, no, it was wild. I'm like, God, yeah, this is Joe Walsh.
Yeah.
He was really sweet too. He was super cool. And we played a couple songs like he started playing the riff for All Night Long.
Yeah.
He showed me the other part. Like he's like showing me how to play the part. Right. And I'm like, yeah, no, I got it, man. And he's like, okay, so now, you play this and I'll play. And we just start playing All Night Long together. And then I think we did some kind of like, I don't know. I forget what, I think we played like a little bit of Fastlane or something like that. And then, like, I think we did trading some solos or something like that. He had a couple amps in the house. And
he must have a serious gear collection, man.
Yeah, most of it I think is at his locker.
Okay, yeah.
He had just a couple things lying around. But yeah, man, we played for a while and we hung out and we talked, and he was just kind of like, yeah, man. So, I'm sorry, I can't help but do my Joe Walsh.
No, it's such a distinct voice, man. It's like his branding almost,
Yeah, for sure. But he's like, yeah, well, we got this big tour. Are you into it? And man, sounds great.
Wait, Joe, let's work out all the details first. Now you just say, twist my fucking arm. Am I into it? Hell yeah.
Yeah, no, it worked out great. And so I definitely have my buddy Drew to thanks for, getting me in the door on that one. And next thing I know, we're in Austin, Texas, rehearsing for like 2 weeks. And we started this tour, and then we did a number of legs of that tour. It was pretty insane, man. I have to say, like, playing alongside Joe was a pretty special experience.
What did you learn musically from that?
So much. Honestly, I can't overstate it. Like, I learned to play guitar just like probably the way all the rest of us do, right? I started playing, learning all my blues licks, and, you learn a little bit of jazz, and then you do you play in your rock bands? And, I went off and I did a classical thing, obviously, for a while, but, and you get your licks, you get your chops together, and you think you're like hot shit, right? So like I had some like fast runs and fast licks and stuff like that I could always rely on to, like, if I'm like, okay, I'm in this solo and I can play this one lick, that everyone's gonna be like, oh yeah, cool.
Like your go-to.
Yeah. Guitar players got some of those licks and you think you're like a badass, and people say, oh man, you sound great, man, and all that stuff. So I remember rehearsals just kind of starting to, like, there were a couple songs where I get a little solo, or Joe and I would trade off, like Turn to Stone, and there's a couple songs like that.
What a song that is, man.
God. So great.
So powerful, man.
I just remember Joe being like, listen, man, you just got to slow down. Like, you don't have to play fast stuff, man. And his ear is incredible. Like, he hears everything. I kind of think of Joe as he's sort of like the Columbo of rock and roll.
That's cool.
Into thinking like he's this dude who's like, he's got that way of talking where it sounds like he's like kind of wasted or whatever. It's just, he is so smart and he is so perceptive, and he hears everything musically, and he's so engaged musically. Like, it's such a big deal to him, and it means so much to him. And so he hears everything you do. And my impression was that he was always trying to help me, man. Like, he was trying to make me a better player.
That's wonderful, man.
It was the coolest thing. Like, and the biggest thing you wanted to do is, like, you wanted to make Joe go, yeah, on stage. Like, if you play something cool, he freaks out and screams.
He's just that's the great thing about guitar players. They love, the common thread. Like, I don't get starstruck, but when I have a guy on that who has emotionally moved me, it's really special for me. But they all, just like everybody's got the thread of, man, I love the music. I love playing guitar. I love other good guitar players,
Oh, yeah. You have to have that.
Yeah. No matter how like high on the food chain somebody might be, basically they're there because of the same thing the guy at the bottom of the food chain is. He loves guitar. He just loves great music.
Well, yeah. And Joe and Clapton and all those dudes from that generation are, they're kind of the same generation.
Yeah.
They all had to watch Jimi Hendrix play, and, all of them were like, holy shit. And why am I even playing guitar? Right. So there's always somebody that's going to, do something that's going to make you freak out.
Yeah.
But the whole goal for me was like, I just wanted Joe's approval. Right.
Yeah, of course.
And if you play something that you think, I'm like, oh man, that was pretty cool, but he's not digging it, he's not going to react.
Yeah.
So like, if he reacts, it's genuine. And so like, when you get him to do that, like, we did months and months of touring. When you would get him to make that noise, that like, that thing, it's just one of the most satisfying things in the world to like hear him say that, and he was cool, man. He'd give you advice. Like, he'd come over and be like, yeah, try it, maybe approach it this way, this solo, or, and he was really helpful. He was great, man. I have to say, the other thing about that's crazy is that, Joe's friends with all of the biggest icons in rock and roll. Like, they're all his buddies. So like, when you're on the road, like, Jimmy Page shows up.
So you got to hang and play with some of these guys.
On that, we all do that. Like, musicians are funny, or like they make their resumes and they put that like shared a stage with.
Yeah. All right.
I don't put that stuff on not that I make resumes, but
no, you didn't have that on you did. I was That was impressive because you know what, and I hate to say this because I'm not judging anybody, but I've noticed people that really, they're early on in their careers, let's say.
Yeah.
Their list is like way longer than like, I don't know, Joe Satriani's.
Yeah. Well, you gotta milk all those credits, man.
Yeah. Like share the stage with and like,
that's kind of like an inside joke with sideman, like, when you see that other thing. But
yeah.
That said, I did have the opportunity. I mean, this just from like a life experience and like the music fan of me, it was like insane. I got to play with Levon Helm from the drummer. Like,
what a soulful human being that guy was, man.
What a trip. Like it was, I think he passed away 2 weeks later and his dog sat on stage next to his drum kit. And
oh my God.
And literally the dog's on the stage and we played. I remember thinking, I'm a huge fan of the band.
Oh God. Yeah.
We're playing, and it was the same. We also in that list was Ringo Starr. I got to play with the freaking Beatle, which is like the most, again, insane experience. But I will say this: both of those two guys, especially with drummers, they all have their feel that's just unique to them, right? And I've been listening to obviously the Beatles, like all of us, and the band, like my whole life. And so playing with both those guys, and Levon and Ringo. First of all, you're like, holy shit, I'm playing with Levon or I'm playing with Ringo. And you're playing, and the thing that hit me that was the coolest, weirdest feeling is that I'm like, oh my God, this feels like the band. Like it's not like a dude playing like Levon, or it's not like a dude playing like Ringo. It's them. And it feels like this band that, like, their pulse, their rhythm, their groove that you've heard your whole life. And it's so overwhelming. It's like, it makes the hairs on your neck stand up, It's like easy feeling. So yeah, Billy Gibbons, we did some stuff with him. Jeff Lynne from ELO, like we rehearsed with Jeff Lynne for like a week because he produced Joe's record, and we were doing like our showcase at the Troubadour or something like that, and record release show, and Jeff rehearsed with us right next to me for like a week.
And he was playing guitar? Yeah, keyboards. Yeah,
I was playing a telly, and so I'm just like hanging out rehearsing with Jeff Lynne, talking about tellies and music, and I mean really insane stuff. And that kind of thing is totally unique to Joe's gig. And I'm sure it's the same playing with like Paul McCartney or somebody.
Sure.
Or, those if you're playing with one of those guys, these legends come out of the woodwork, and it's such a cool, overwhelming experience. Well,
it's funny, man. I had I don't know if I told this before. This was really weird. I was sitting, I just finished an interview, and man, I had a lot of work to do, and I was kind of like deep in thought, and my phone rings, and I don't recognize the number, but I get calls from people, back and forth all day. So I always answer the phone. And this thick Cockney accent, and he goes, "Hello, Craig. This is Phil Collin."
Oh, Jeff Leppard. Yeah.
And I remember I pulled the phone back and I looked at the phone and I'm like, what the again, it wasn't like starstruck. I'm just like, how did if someone said, okay, don't answer that phone, you have 5,000 guesses to think who's on the other end of it, I wouldn't have come up with Phil Collin,
I always guess Phil Collin.
No, but here's the real funny thing. My wife, she's not really a music person, and she's from the UK, funny enough. And I said, so I told her the story. She goes, "Oh my God, you have Phil Collins coming on the call?"
Colin.
I'm like, no, Phil Collins. She goes, "Who's that?" This is a really great guitar player. It's just really funny. So I understand. Like it's very like
surreal.
It's like you don't think certain things are going to happen. Like not because of someone's stature, but just because of the journey that you started at one point, and here you're on a different point where you were watching someone else's journey. And how the hell did this possibly intersect?
Yeah, it's a crazy thing. You know, especially when you grow up loving music and obsessing with it, they seem like these untouchable gods or something. You know, like, and I still carry around like my 12-year-old self. He's still a part of me. You know what I mean? And
hey, mom and dad will be real happy you said that. From a psychological, from a therapist standpoint.
Nostalgic person, actually, I think by nature, and so it's never lost on me. Like playing with Ringo or Levon, or Jeff Lynn, like those experiences. I mean, I remember at that same concert, the record release party at the Troubadour, like Stuart Copeland was in the audience, right? I mean, actually, the place was littered with rock and roll royalty, like, like David Crosby was in the crowd, and like all these dudes, right? I got to talk to Stuart Copeland after the gig. He came up. He was like, "Hey, man, great show." And I talked to Stuart Copeland for like 20 minutes. Like, I'm a huge Police fan. So for me, that was just like, are you kidding me? These kinds of things, when they happen, I really go back to like my 12, 13-year-old self. It just like, I can't help it. I'm so overwhelmed with like joy.
Because they've moved you emotionally, man. And they've got something inside, a piece of them is already inside of you. And that now that you could share that, it's like, so how could you not be joyous?
It's just overwhelming. And it's such a
totally
cool thing. I think that like being in this business, I think that's like the biggest reward of it, to be able to have an experience like that. It's pretty special. Yeah.
Well, man, I'm really glad you got to enjoy this, because it's definitely not wasted on you, man, which is great. So, and then is any chance you'll be back with Joe at any point in time?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's possible, I suppose, but Joe tends to kind of like, I think the guy I took over from Gannon Arnold, I know Gannon came back after. So I was going to go back with Joe. I was doing the B-52’s though. Joe kind of said, "Hey, if you guys can get other gigs, go ahead." And I remember like, and Joe, like when he told us that, he was like, "Hey man, do you have another gig?" And I'm like, "Yeah, actually, you know what? I just got this gig with the B-52’s." And he's funny. He's like, "Oh yeah, they're great. A big bouffant hairdo." And I was like, "Yeah, those guys."
That's hilarious.
A couple months later, he asked, he was doing this tour with Bob Seger. And it was kind of like one of these things where he wasn't going to tour Joe, but this came up and he's like, "You know what? I'm going to do this tour." And so he called me up and asked if I could do it. Unfortunately, I couldn't, because I'd already committed to the B-52’s stuff. And so that was kind of that. And then Joe got Gannon back in the band. I think since then he's like used Tom Bukovac, his band for a while. And so, you never know. But of course, if I was free, I would love to play with Joe again. Joe's like, he's just one of those guys, man. It's just a gift to be around the dude.
That's so cool, man. I'm so happy. And for the record, everybody listening, I've had tons of requests for Bukovac. He does not do interviews. Sorry, I've talked with him or to his people.
Think of it, I don't either. Let's just end it right now. I'm going to go that route too.
Oh, man.
I think it's my first interview, actually, to be honest.
No, it's not. Really? You're a pro, man. Well, I'm the lucky guy, so there you go. I beat everybody. Your current gig, American Idol.
Yeah.
How'd you get that, and any cool stories?
Yeah, for sure. So American Idol, like they were, on Fox for all those years, big successful show that kind of like created that whole format. And they went off the air, I want to say about 2-3 years ago, right? They did like, I think something like 15 seasons on Fox, and they went off the air. And so then there's this reboot now. Now it's on ABC, new judges, same Ryan Seacrest, but new band. Ricky Minor was, I think, MD for all those seasons, I'm pretty sure. But so this guy who's a friend of mine who I'd worked with before, Chris Pooley, he got the gig MDing for this new version of Idol. And it's funny because I'd actually just sold my house in LA. I had a place in Chicago and a place in LA. And I decided, the market's up. I'm just going to sell my place in LA. I'm only really only doing like touring work at this point. The session stuff I wasn't really doing anymore. I'm like, here's a chance to make some money. And, I can always go back to LA or whatever. Literally, like after closing on the sale of my house, like literally, I think 2 weeks later, I get a call from Chris. He's like, "Hey man, got this gig. Anyway, it's American Idol and it's all in town LA work, TV, great. Yeah. I just sold my house there. So, okay. But it worked out. I just, so now I just Airbnb places when I go back to LA, but, and I'm in LA a lot still, but, that was from Chris. We worked, I had met Chris in Moscow.
Of all places. Wow.
He was playing with Morrissey from the Smiths.
Oh my God. Wow.
And a bunch of my friends are in the Morrissey band. So I know a lot of those guys. And when it was in like 2009, I was in France. I was working with that French artist and we were in Moscow. We were actually doing some shows in Moscow. And we both, the Morrissey band and the French band, we both happened to be in Moscow at the same time. So we got together at this bar and just got like really drunk and
It's so weird that would happen in Moscow.
Moscow, I know. That's pretty wild. I met Chris and his wife Ginger, and they were awesome, and we really hit it off and became friends. And I remember, and I just met him, and I was like, wow, what a cool guy. And then that tour ended, and I got back to the States. And then my buddy Paul Bushnell, who's a bass player, iconic session bass player, plays with Faith Hill, Tim McGraw, really good guy, who got me on that French gig, actually, or he got me the audition, I should say. He had some benefit thing he had to do, and it was with like Kenny Aronoff on drums and Chris Shiflett from the Foo Fighters, who I kind of knew from my buddy Nate anyway, a little bit. I don't really know Chris that well, but he's like, hey man, we need a keyboard player for this, this benefit gig. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I met this guy in Moscow, Chris, he's really cool. And so I called Chris up and we got him in on it, and we just did this one gig. It was just like some cover songs, right? Like the whole gig with this like all-star band. We had a great time. We, hit it off again. We're talking. Right after that, Chris got a big gig becoming the music director for the TV show Glee.
Oh, wow. And
Chris is a very talented, very organized, very highly skilled musical director. And he's about as pro as it gets. And so he got this big gig, and he reached out to me like, hey man, I got this thing with Glee, and it's all cover songs. And I think maybe he thought of me because we did that cover gig together.
Oh, right.
I don't know what he's thinking, but maybe he's like, oh wow, Greg knows how to play like all these cover songs, and we were doing all these different styles, and so maybe he just thought I would fit.
Well, or maybe it was, and like, I know I'm like this. I think most people are like this. You just helped him, so like in his mind, he's like, man, I got to make sure I return the favor.
Yeah, maybe. It wasn't like I got him some big gig. It was just like this stupid local gig.
No, but the fact that you thought of him.
Oh yeah.
That's what I know. That's what it doesn't like necessarily measure the size of it, but if someone is kind enough to think of you, you say, good, that's really kind. I want to make sure I think of that person.
Well, his favor was much bigger to me than mine to him. He got me like a real touring gig with this Glee thing. That was a weird experience, but it was great. Like the people in the band were great. Zach Alford was playing drums, also from Bowie, who's a buddy of my friend and Sterling Campbell's friend. They've both done the B-52’s and Bowie gigs together over years and years.
That's another guy. I've interviewed many of Bowie's guitar in his later life.
Oh yeah. Sweet. Yeah. I'm sure Sterl and Zach know all those guys. Yeah, man. So it was this really fun tour, even though like the band wasn't really featured. It was more like about the actors from the TV show. Sure. But the band was great. Chris's wife Ginger was playing bass, and she had played in the Smashing Pumpkins for a while. And so it was just this cool band. We were having a great time, and we did some work together, and then that kind of ended. But I stayed in touch with Chris. I'd come through town, like he lives in like Long Beach, or now he lives in like Marina Del Rey, but Manhattan Beach. But when I'd come through town with the Bees, I'd be like, hey man, you and Ginger should come out and see the show. And so we just kind of stayed in touch, even though we hadn't worked on a gig in years. And he got this Idol thing, and Chris is great, man. He thought of me, and I was, he thought I would be right for it. I mean, maybe based on that Glee experience, again, a lot of learning a little bit for songs.
Yeah, it's not a dissimilar experience.
Similar in a way, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Having to learn a lot of songs. And Chris's thing is I think one of the things he's really good at is putting together a band and having it be super authentic, not like a cruise ship band or a wedding band. It's like the parts are nailed, the tones are nailed, everything's really dialed in, and Chris is great at that. So I think that's a big part of what he looks for people.
Well, you've obviously got a particular skill set in being able to learn and assimilate a ton of material in a short period of time.
Yeah. I guess, I think my memory retention is pretty good. Well, it was better. It's becoming a lot worse, but I think I'm a decent problem solver, in terms of, okay, here's the job, here's the task at hand. How do I conquer that task? By doing this, and this. And I think I can approach it pretty logically, maybe, I think it helps. But so I got that gig with Chris, the Idol gig. And I just started, I'm in my second season now of that. We did a whole season last year, and we're kind of in the middle of the second season right now. But it was pretty nuts, man. The first episode, it's called Hollywood Week. And that's when first episode where the band gets involved. The other episodes are about like auditions and, with like maybe an accompanist or something, but not, it's like the first episode was a full band. So we get like a list of like 50 songs.
Wow.
Right? And all genres, bluegrass, country, metal, rock and roll.
Are you the only guitarist, or is there another?
There are two guitar players. I've been like in the chair the whole time, and we've had some rotating guys coming in on the other stuff. We have kind of a pretty permanent guy now, this guy Tim Stewart, who you should talk to. He's ridiculously talented. He plays with Lady Gaga also.
Oh, very cool.
He's a badass. But he's kind of the other guitar player, the main guy now. But
do you guys switch off, or like rhythm and lead, or do you primarily?
I think we have different skill sets and some that overlap. I mean, Tim is just like one of the best like R&B, soul, gospel chops kind of guys. He's so good. And I mean, he's a badass rock player too. He's got crazy skills with, soloing and leads and stuff. But, and I think I'm more the like, rock and roll pop, acoustic, multi-instrument, like I can play some mandolin, I can play ukulele or whatever you need, some of that. Not that I'm not like a Matt Beck type guy on those things.
You know Matt. How do you know Matt?
Matt's one of my subs for the B-52’s.
He's great, man. He was really wonderful to talk with.
Oh yeah, Matt's up. And I'm not like Matt in terms of like playing other instruments.
No, he's like a savant. Like literally, he's
left-handed is weird.
But, no, yeah. He's off the charts, man. Yeah.
Yeah. But, so yeah, I would say that's, kind of how we approach the Idol thing. But so my first day with Idol, it was nuts. We do like a band rehearsal and, without the contestants, where it's kind of like, okay, we got this list of 50 songs. We don't have our charts just yet, but, or actually I think in that day, there are people that write charts for the show. So I think we just get our charts that morning. So I fly to LA the day before. We just get these like list of 50 songs and we start rehearsing.
50?
Yeah, 50 for one episode. And
that's
and it's
crazy,
like,
man.
Every week it's like another 50 songs typically.
So this is like, sorry to cut you off. This has got to be like a second wind as far as your chops.
Oh, it's an amazing experience in terms of, getting your shit together. For one, you have to sight read pretty well and you have to know all these different kinds of music, and you have to be really, the hardest thing on this Hollywood Week episode is that you have to change keys on the fly.
Oh my God.
That's a huge challenge for so the way it works is you'll have like say 80 contestants, right? Each of the contestants get to choose a song from the pool of 50, and they can overlap. They can choose the same song, right? So you get that list. You know that you're going to be working on these 50 songs. You don't know which ones. You don't know, maybe one of them you're going to play like 7 times. You have no idea, right? So the day you rehearse is the day you film for this episode. So you start the day at like, say, 7 a.m. downbeat, right? The night before, you have to sound check at the venue. Maybe that goes till 2 a.m. So maybe you get an hour's sleep, right?
Oh, my God.
You show up for the downbeat and you rehearse all 80 contestants, okay? So say from like 10 a.m. to like noon, you rehearse all 80 of them. And each of them gets like a couple minutes or something like that. But the thing is, you don't know what key you're going to be doing any of these songs in.
Based on their voice.
Yeah, like they make those decisions, I think, late the night before. And as a musician, you're rolling through, and like people are handing you pieces of paper and you're shuffling papers. And as a guitar player, like I try to be pretty authentic with this stuff. So like, I'm going to play like the right kind of guitar. If it's a Strat style song, I want a Strat. If it's a 12 string, I want to have the 12 string ready. If it's a Les Paul tune, you get the idea. So you don't know what key it's going to be in. So for example, like say and this happened, like the song Rhiannon by Fleetwood Mac, right?
Yeah, sure.
A minor, it's that figure, on the neck. There's kind of like that one way to play it, right? Next thing you know, like you get your chart, it's Rhiannon in the key of F sharp minor.
So you have to change your tunings, right? I mean, do you change tunings or do you just change keys?
15 seconds and they're counting it off. And this goes on for like 5 hours, right? And so really like a song like that, for example, I would have to be like, okay, I can't play it on those set of strings. So I'm going to capo, second fret and play it as if it were an E minor, like those kind of open string movements. But, those relationships of the frets are very different. Obviously. Yeah.
And so that's on the fly. There's a bunch of decisions that you've got to, there's a lot of moving parts into each one of those decisions. And then you got to do that wow.
For hours and hours and hours. And then you take a break at lunch, and then next thing you know, you're filming in front of the judges. And like, if you mess that up, it's on camera. Yeah. And, so it's really intense, right? And really fun too, of course. And, some songs you get and it's like piano centric. So like maybe you're just like, comping chords. And if that's the case, it's no big deal changing keys. But,
sure.
Like Wicked Game by Chris Isaak, that was like a song that came up, like not instead of the B minor, that thing, like.
Yeah, that's a very guitar centric.
There's one way to do it, right? It's that lick, that riff. It's you can't just like, fake your way through it. And so then instead of B minor, you're like, oh, okay, now it's in D minor. Oh shit.
Oh
okay.
God.
Got to work it out. Like, boom, they're counting it off. And so it's really intense in that way. And it's kind of unique to that first episode because there's so many contestants and they do it all over the course of one day. So,
and I hope that gig pays you great because you're earning every penny.
It's cool. Of course. I honestly, I love doing the gig because of that challenge. I think it's great. Check this out. So my first day, that day that I'm just describing, I happened to come down with the H1N1 virus, flu virus. Remember like 2 years ago or a year ago, that was like, it was on CNN. People were dying, right? I had it and I got it. I started getting symptoms the night before during the rehearsal. And I woke up, I think that morning at like 5 a.m. to get to the studio in time and the whole thing. I had 103-degree fever and a massive cough. And I did that, 10, 11 hour day, all those contestants, all those key changes, all that stuff with 103-degree fever. I kept having to like go to the bathroom, like when you're sick, you got to pee like every 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, and you're high and you need water, then you're all dry. That's a nightmare.
Yeah. We'd only get like union like bathroom breaks and stuff like every like hour and a half or whatever. So I'm dying up there. I've got this fever. I kept having to cough. And when we were filming, the judges, like, it'd be quiet and the set would be quiet. And I'd literally like, trying to hold the cough. And it felt like an out of body experience. Like I felt like I was tripping or something, but I got through it. And literally at the end of the day, I'm like, dude, I am so fired. Like I know I felt like I didn't do a good enough job. Like I wasn't at my best. And I went up to Chris afterwards. I'm like, man, I am so sorry, man. I don't know if you know, but I'm really sick. And he goes, oh, I didn't even know. Wow, cool, man. Thank you.
Dude, that's pretty impressive. But when you're a type A personality and you are driven, for most of us, the standards that we put ourselves through are far more unreasonable than we'd put anybody else through. So that's probably what happened, man.
Yeah, I can be pretty hard on myself and all that, But I mean, I've been doing this a long time too, though. So like, if I feel like I screwed something up, I also have the ability to be like, well, it's okay. The world's not going to end. Yeah, worst case, I get fired or something. But I'll get another gig eventually, or if I don't, whatever, I'll still be fine.
You know what, man? That's I tell that to my kids all the time because they're older, but I always tell them because they're young in their adult lives now. I'm like, man, don't worry about it. There's nothing that you're going to do like almost ever that's going to like really impact your life the way you think it is, man. And you don't realize that too, like you said, you've been doing something a while and you're like, okay, you can put things in perspective,
Yeah. So. And pressure is always going to be part of this job. I feel like, the American Idol thing, and I imagine, I think you talked to Justin Derico, right?
Yeah. Well, he does the voice. He said the same thing. It's nuts, man. I don't
know Justin personally. I've met him once and he's a super cool guy. And
very cool guy.
Amazing guitar player. But I would imagine he probably talked to about some of these things, like the whole being on the spot, having to change keys, having to sight read. And then it's not like, when you're playing with an artist and you play the Tonight Show or something. Like I played a lot of TV with like the Goo Goo Dolls and Jewel and Fight for Fighting and people like that, Joe Walsh and all that. So you do that, but that's different. That's a song, like it's one song. You've been playing it for months or years. And you get up and you just have to play that song that you know so well and just not freak out too much. This is like that though, but like a song that you literally are sight reading for the first time, or maybe you played once, and it's in a group of 50 songs, right? So, and it just keeps coming. Like you do a 2-hour episode, and then you do that, and you're like, oh God, we got another episode next week, and so the pressure is pretty consistent,
yeah,
which is a really fun thing to do because
sure, I could see that.
keeps you on your toes, as they say,
Well, the challenge of it is like, there's a good level of satisfaction, especially since out of 50 songs.
Sees it. If you fuck up, it's like 10 million people on TV watching it. And then maybe it's a meme and like somebody's like, oh, look, the guitar player screwed that thing up, man. Like, those things, like they do go through your head. You're like, all right, just chill yourself out, breathe, concentrate, do your job, And
is it fair to say that some nights when you have 50 songs, you may not know 45 of them?
Oh, for sure. I would say most of the stuff I've never heard. Like I listen to a lot of like current pop music, I feel like I do now though, because I have to. Like now I know this stuff. And, eventually like we're in our second season, some of these songs start repeating.
Sure.
Like, oh, right. This is that Bruno Mars song again. Okay, cool.
Right.
But yeah, my first time around with that, I didn't know any of this stuff. But there's actually a pretty healthy pool of, they'll play like old soul stuff like Aretha songs.
Which is cool.
Yeah, which is great. And then, Sam and Dave or whatever. And then, classic rock stuff like, Barracuda by Heart and, rock and roll stuff. And so, it runs the gamut. And then, jazz standards, you'll be doing like a Sinatra song. So you're comping chords and whatever, like it's all over the map. It's pretty, and I love it for that. It's amazing. What
a great experience. Well, I'll tell you what, man, anybody following your background, I mean, you're like pretty much could do anything at any time in any way. So, I mean, this is no, seriously, this is just like this is another like feather in your cap of, man, that's the dude you want, which is great for you, man.
Thank you.
Let's talk about, are you working on anything now outside of Idol that you're excited about?
Yeah. And again, it's just more of a personal thing. I did release a record a couple years ago, and we can talk about that in a quick second, maybe.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Augmentation.
I'm not really working on that now. I did this record, and I'm really proud of it. I think it's cool. It's called Augmentation. It's kind of like I loved these guitar albums of the 70s and 80s that were not like about the solos so much, but they were compositionally cool, like Jeff Beck's Wired and Blow by Blow, and Andy Summers and Fripp did a really cool record. And, like I was really into these kind of Steve Vai Flexible, even though like he's like this total shredder, like those compositions and those songs are really, listenable. And I listened to that record, not to learn licks, but just because I liked the record.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to make a record that was sort of like a nod to that, that like idea of, it could be a little muso and there could be some solos, but I wanted there to be like these cool compositions. And so I worked at that for a bit, and I recorded some songs. It was all track live, most of it. And I did some overdubs later. But anyway, I did that. I'm very proud of it. Those listening, if you feel like checking it out.
Yeah. Let me tell people exactly where to find it. Did you have musicians playing the other instruments, or did you play everything?
No, I had a rhythm section. I had my old buddy Matt Walker from the Cupcakes, who now plays with Morrissey. He's on drums. My buddy Randy Cook, who plays in Fight for Fighting, and like tons of other artists like Smash Mouth and stuff. He's a really talented drummer. So those two guys, and my friend Dan Leali, who's a great Chicago drummer. Not a lot of people know about Dan outside of Chicago, but Dan's like a badass. And then my buddy Mike Farrow plays with Alanis Morissette. Played some keyboards, and my buddy Nick McCree, who's an awesome jazz bass player here in Chicago, he played some bass. And then I did play, some other instruments on it too.
Very cool. So I know it's on Bandcamp. Let me tell people where you can find it. Check it out. It's called Augmentation, and you can find it on Greg's Bandcamp. It's Bandcamp. Is it Greg Suran, GregSuran.com? Or is it /?
Yeah, it's on iTunes and Spotify.
Okay, cool. You can stream it on those places. Augmentation, Augmentation. That's another. Go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry. No, go ahead. You go.
So that's, I kind of completed that like a year and a half ago or something like that. I haven't done any shows with it just because I've been pretty busy working. But the other thing I've been doing that I am excited about is I started working on my classical guitar chops again. And that was my major in college.
At Northwestern.
Yeah, and I was a performance major. And I was never like one of these world-class classical guitarists. I mean, because you have to literally spend your whole life to be one of them. And you really can't just waste time playing like jazz or rock or whatever, right? Like that's a whole other thing. And I was kind of late to the classical game. I wanted to go to Northwestern.
It's a great school, man.
It is a great school. And academically, it's a great school. It's here in Chicago, it's Evanston, and I wanted to be close to Chicago. And they didn't have like a jazz program or a pop music, obviously thing. It's just a classical school. So I kind of learned late to the game, like my junior year, I think, of high school, I started just learning enough to audition. But I went through that whole experience and it was great. But when it was done and I graduated, I kind of worked at it for a while. Like I tried doing some gigs. I just realized, okay, I don't really have a future in this. And it was kind of heartbreaking in a way.
Yeah. But your heart's not into that music either, is it?
Well, I love that music, to be honest. It's some of like classical music. I'm a huge fan of classical music, and especially classical guitar. I think the repertoire is just beautiful and amazing. And Bach is, I probably, if I had to listen to one thing the rest of my life, it would be Bach. Because I just think it's the most compelling music that I've ever heard. And I feel like I can listen to it 100,000 times and never get bored of it. But I realized that I wasn't going to have much of a career in this thing, and I wasn't at the level of these competitive guys. So I kind of just put it down, and I haven't played for like 15, 20 years.
Oh, that's a long time.
It is a long time. I mean, I would pick it up maybe every now and then, but it'd be so frustrating because you lose your technique, if you don't really work at it. You're like, oh God, I've like regressed so much. This sucks. And it's frustrating. Well, finally, like about 2 years ago, I said, you know what, I'm going to spend the time and I'm going to try to get some of my chops back with that. And it's going to be painful and it's going to suck. And I'm going to be really frustrated for probably a couple months. And I started, B-52’s, we were doing a tour in Australia with the Simple Minds, and I brought my classical with me, and every day I would spend an hour practicing, and I started to get my chops back, and now it's something I'm working at again. Not
That's
because
really cool.
Thanks. Yeah. Like I have no illusions that I'm going to be some badass classical guitar player. It's kind of, for me, it's very satisfying, and it's like that music is just so hard to play.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's so challenging. And, I that was my major, and I did like a senior recital and a junior recital, and I did all these master classes with like legendary classical guitarists. And so I went through that process, but it's so hard and so hard to maintain. But if, I'm at a level where I feel like my technique's close to where it was back in the day.
That's great, man.
Yeah. And it's just very satisfying to sit down and play a Bach lute suite for like 45 minutes.
That's a lot of playing, man. That's amazing. And I noticed you got your right hand, your claws on.
Yeah, I got claws. I actually have, this is a little piece of ping pong that I cut up to put on the nail, which is a trick I learned from my teacher back then.
A ping pong ball?
Yeah, you take a ping pong ball, you cut it up, you super glue it to your finger, and then you cut it and file it to shape it like a nail.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's the sounding thing to an actual nail. Like the press-on nails and the fake nails don't sound good. They sound weird.
Oh, man, let me see that. So you have that just on one finger.
Yeah, because nail.
Your other nails are pretty good, though. Your other nails are great, man.
Yeah, and
fine set of nails there, Greg.
Oh, yeah, actually, like girls think that it's really creepy. I remember, like if I meet a girl,
I could see that, man. To be honest,
and like they're interested in me or something like that, and then I'll like see my hands are like, oh, what's with those creepy hands?
Nice. Nothing to make you feel like a man than when a girl tells you that.
Whatever.
Oh my God.
But I use my nails I do a lot of hybrid picking stuff, where like even on electric and acoustic, if I'm holding the pick, I use my other fingers and I use the nails. I don't use the meat of my fingers to pick steel string.
I should do that, man. I'd probably bite them off though, man. I'd be biting that ping pong ball. Get ping pong shit in between my teeth. Man, you grew up in Chicago. What was your childhood like?
It was pretty interesting. I grew up in the southwest suburbs of Chicago. My parents are both psychologists, so that was interesting. And they're great parents, great people. They loved us very much. I started playing guitar pretty young, and I was really into like Kiss, and I really and then later like Van Halen and AC/DC, and I was just like a kid growing up, rock and roll and heavy metal and stuff like that. And I started playing guitar, and I played sports when I was a kid. I played like Little League. I played on a team that like advanced. They do the Little League World Series and all that stuff. I was on a team that went pretty far in that process. We almost went to that state championship level actually. And I wasn't like an amazing athlete or anything like that, but I was okay. And
that's unusual, as you know. Most musicians are not. It's like either music or the other. Sports. There's only a few guys that are hybrids. Yeah,
my dad was really into sports, and he kind of got me to try to play sports. I think it was also for like the experience of like being around other kids and learning like, whole socialization part of it. But I played football in high school.
Oh, wow. What position did you play?
Halfback.
Wide receiver? Okay. You're a halfback.
Yeah. I was like, I was quick.
Yeah.
But again, it wasn't like I was some standout athlete or something like that. And I did break my fingers in high school when I got tackled. I fumbled the ball and I got tackled and I broke 2 fingers. And I was playing guitar pretty consistently. I was practicing like 4 hours a day back then playing guitar. And so I couldn't play guitar for like months. And that was like, I'm done with sports. That's
yeah.
That was my right after my freshman year, or at the end of freshman year, or whatever, end of football season. So, but yeah, it was really good, man. My dad, my parents did divorce when I was 12. That was tough. I'm the oldest. That was kind of a weird time. I was also like, it was kind of a strange time. It was the school I was at. I was getting bullied pretty heavily by these 2 massive dudes.
Really?
Oh yeah, dude, it was brutal. Like they would beat the crap out of me. Like
what's up with that, man?
Yeah, it was just one of those things that happens, But
that's horrible.
Part of it was because, so like I tested into this academic thing when I was in junior high, where it was I would take my classes separately with this small group of people who tested into this program, and it was basically just me and like 5 other girls in the whole school that tested into it.
Right.
So, like I would have, lunch and gym class with the whole school, but my classes would be with this small group of people. We'd be taking like, algebra in 7th grade and stuff like that. And, some more advanced science and history classes. And so when I'd go to lunch, I was the dude who was like in that special class with those girls. So I was such a target, man. Like these guys pound on me. Like, and it was like a thing. So I would say like, there was a pretty dark time of my childhood, and my parents got divorced around that time. And it was, when you're a kid, you're growing up and you're in adolescence and you're going through all that.
Tough enough.
Yeah, it was pretty challenging if I'm being honest. But the one thing I will say this, the one thing that got me through it was guitar, and I was obsessed with guitar, and I really hated like my school life. And I hated I just couldn't wait to get home because it was just such a brutal experience that I'd get home and I'd practice guitar from like 3 p.m. to like 10 p.m.
Yeah.
Take a break for dinner. And then I'd do my homework at the end of the night. And that was like the thing that got me through all that for sure. No doubt.
It's funny because like I think I had this conversation, one of my kids, my older son, who's now 29, when he was younger, and he was saying, it's supposed to be the best time of my life. I'm miserable. I'm like, man, that's only TV shit. I said, I don't know anybody that, with rare exception, everybody's really sucking wind in their teenage years. It's really difficult. There's a lot of assholes out there and that get joy in like this situation, making your life miserable and, trying to figure out a standard that you should hold, that you should fit their standard. Like, who are they? I said, it's just tough, man. You got to hang in there. Yeah.
Well, and they're just kids too. And I know like these 2 guys that used to beat the crap out of me, like I know that their fathers beat them.
Right. Right.
So it's like,
that's what all they learned.
I have empathy and I have compassion for the whole thing. Right. I have anger too. No, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But I also, you understand how these things are cyclical and how it works. And they were just kids too, but kids can be mean, man. Believe me, like it's a tough world.
It is a tough world.
It's not that my life, I'm not saying my life was like that hard. I mean, emotionally it was hard at times, but like my parents both loved me and stuff, and I wasn't homeless and all that. So I'm not trying to paint this picture of like this hard life I had or whatever.
Well, I don't feel that you are.
Okay.
It's not how it's coming across.
Just want that to be clear.
What's that?
Just want that to be clear. Right?
No, man. You're just being honest about a shitty time in your life, man. I don't take it as anything else. Everybody's had them and still has them and is going to have them. And, that's just the way life works, man. I always say life's not for the weak, No,
it's not. I think life is challenging and it's wonderful and beautiful too.
But you got to have some coping skills to get through the dark days, man, because they're coming whether you like them or not.
No question. And like I said, I think I really kind of went inward. I became very shy, because I didn't want to expose myself to people emotionally or anything because, it's a very vulnerable state. My experience was that if you do that, you get hurt very badly.
Yeah, of course. I totally get that, man.
And So I think, but for a musician, that's a real asset and that's a power, because when you go inward, you know, that's you in the practice room. That's you learning music. That's you with your music and identifying. It's almost like these bands, especially back then, like the bands that I was into when I was really like in junior high, it was like Van Halen and
Sure.
Rush. And, you know, like I identified with these bands. They were like, they were my gang. Like they were guys that were going to beat up the bullies for me.
No, I totally get it.
And so I really identified with that music and them, and then guitar was like my thing. And I'll tell you, like, as I got to be good at guitar, like, I was by junior high, I was like able to play like Eruption, you know, and stuff like
Holy
that.
Shit. That's pretty badass, man.
Not quite. I could probably play it a lot better now.
You know, but still, man, junior high, you're what, 13, 14? That's
I was like probably 13 or
pretty
something.
impressive, man.
You know, I could do it. I could finger tap and I could do all those licks. And, you know, I knew some Angus Young licks and I knew some Zeppelin licks and like riffs and stuff. And the cool thing about that is that even though I was bullied by these dudes, once it kind of got out that like, oh, hey, you know, Greg knows how to play guitar pretty well. He's kind of, you know, little badass on that thing. Then all of a sudden I started getting some respect from these people.
Oh, so then you probably identify with that even more.
Yeah, like
it was like your savior almost.
Yeah, by 8th grade, like actually they kind of had stopped giving me such a hard time because I was like that kid in school that could play, you know, Eruption.
Good for you.
You know what I mean? Like it was like a thing, and so I got a lot of positive feedback from that, and I think it gave me the sense of identity and the sense of power. You know, so it's, you know, music can really, really do wonders, man.
Well, I think, too, that's one thing as a child, you do not feel a sense of power at all. And if you could find something that makes you feel that, and I think almost every musician I've interviewed has felt that with the instrument, especially the people that, and it's more than not that look, you have to be pretty introverted in a sense to be willing to sit in a room for 8 hours a day practicing guitar alone.
Yeah.
Right? And you know, and so I think a lot of people feel that way where the guitar sort of empowered them. And even though they may have felt socially awkward because it's like, okay, and now they're expected to perform on stage, which is a dichotomy. It's not, there's no congruence between that, and it's people struggle. But this thing, it was like a wand, a magic wand that, you know, it's like a protection thing. Like I could do this now, you know? And so I think a lot of people feel that way, man.
Yeah, no doubt.
Let's talk about your gear now, since we're talking about guitar. What's your go-to, and like what other few guitars would round out your top?
You know, I was a Les Paul guy for so long, and I still am. Like I use it. I switch between a lot of guitars depending on the gig.
No, talk about just the ones you like, not the ones you.
Yeah. But I know what you're saying. Probably my go-to. I have this beautiful 1966 Telecaster. Fender.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and it's all original and it's amazing. And that's probably like my favorite guitar. I love that guitar. And,
when did you get that, and where?
I was on tour with Walsh. Actually, we were out on that road, and I really wanted a mid '60s Tele really bad. And I don't have a huge vintage collection. I have a pretty big collection of guitars, but the vintage part of it is, you know, I've got like 5 or 6 vintage guitars. Probably.
That's nice. That's great.
It's not bad. It's not bad.
Yeah.
But, so when I was with Jewel, right, I was her MD for a little while there. She had this 65 Tele that was given to her as a birthday present, right? And she had told me like, hey, if you want to play this guitar, you're welcome to use it. And I was like, yeah, definitely. And I kind of like for the 2 years I was with her, like I had it at my house and I'd bring it on tour, and I had it like, it was like kind of my guitar, hers, you know, and I always knew that.
Right.
So she was cool enough to like just let me use it all those years, and I really got attached to it. I just loved it, and I wasn't much of a Tele guy prior to that. And then, you know, she kind of did a pivot in her career and became like a country artist, and she moved her whole thing down to Nashville, and we kind of stopped working together more or less. And she was like, hey, so yeah, I'm going to need that guitar back. Like,
what guitar?
Yeah. So of course I had to give it back to her. But I had been on the lookout for one for years, and I was out with Joe, and Joe and I actually, he was cool. Every now and then we'd go out guitar shopping, just the two of us.
That's got to be fun with a guy like that who's got so much history and the money that he's kind of gone through a bunch of stuff to know good and bad.
To a guitar shop with Joe Walsh is a pretty like cool thing because people freak the fuck out.
Yeah.
you know. So anyway, but Joe and I were starting to look around, and I was kind of looking for that. I think he was looking for another Strat. I remember going into a different guitar shop here in Chicago. I wasn't living back here at the time, but we were on the road, and I wasn't with Joe at this time, but I saw this Tele, man, and it was just beautiful. And I had played a lot of them. There was something about this one. It just felt right. You know, the neck felt right. It was, you know, quick action, not too thick of a neck, which for me is great.
Yeah.
It was just beautiful. It sounded great. And, you know, these guitars are like 10, 12 grand, you know what I'm saying? Like, so you're not just going to buy any old guitar like that.
No, you're going to make sure that thing fits you like a potential spouse.
Yeah. So I had it for like 6 years, and I finally came upon the one I found, and I think it was like almost 10 grand or something like that. And which, you know, that's a big investment, man.
Huge.
It's a car. So I did it, and I bought it, and I love that guitar.
Good for you, man.
I use it. It's great. I don't really tour with it anymore. I toured with it with Joe, but that was kind of the only tour I did with that guitar. And it was cool. I was so excited, man. I'm like later that day we were on tour, and I'm like, Joe, I bought this 66 Tele, you know, before the show. We kind of go into Joe's dressing room and talk like the whole band.
Huddle.
So he hadn't seen it yet, right? And he's like, oh, cool, man. You got it, you know, cool. I can't wait to see it. So the show, I'm playing the Tele, right? And we're playing the song Funk 49, right?
Oh my God. Dude, that is crazy that you're playing Funk 49 with Joe Walsh. Honestly, that's nuts.
It's every night you get to play that song with Joe Walsh. Pretty cool. So we're playing it, and you know, there's like the drum breakdown on the recording. Well, live we had 2 drummers on the tour, right? Joe would like to do that. Weird. Yeah, it was kind of cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah. But he would extend the drum breakdown where they would go back and forth and do like little solos and stuff. So usually, like, we'd stand off side stage. Sometimes he'd be on stage left with our bass player George, or sometimes he'd come stage right. So he sees I was playing at the Tele, and he comes stage right, and we're kind of off stage. And he's like, "Hey, man, is that that's the Tele?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude, check it out. It's a 66, and it was like a blonde, kind of yellowish Tele with a rosewood fretboard." And he's looking at it. He's like, "You know, a lot of people don't know this, but you know, I recorded Funk 49 with a 66 Tele into a Champ cranked." He's like,
"Wow."
This is him telling this story. Maybe some people, like all the, experts would differ on that, but this is Joe telling me, so I'm assuming it's true.
Sure.
He goes, yeah, he's like, it was a 66 Tele into a Champ. And he's looking at it. He's like, you know what? Looks just like this. It was a blonde with the rosewood fretboard. And maybe this is the one. I'm sure it wasn't, but I was like, holy shit. And then we go back out and we finish Funk 49. And I'm like, oh my God, this might be the guitar that Joe. I'm sure it wasn't, but
that's pretty cool though, man.
Yeah, but I love that guitar.
Awesome. What's number 2 and 3 in your favorites?
So I've got this Guild acoustic. It's a D52 NT, and it's an early 90s. And this is kind of an interesting thing. It was given to me by Slash from Guns N' Roses. Slash was a member of my family for years.
Okay.
At the height of Guns N' Roses, when I was in high school and going into college, my cousin Renee and he were dating at that time, and eventually they married. And so Renee lived on the West Coast in LA. She was a model and all this and that. She's my first cousin, my dad's brother, daughter.
Yeah. And
we're talking like 89, 90 through like 96, those years. Like Guns N' Roses was, they were like the biggest rock band.
Yeah. So Slash was like your cousin-in-law.
Yeah, he was cousin-in-law, and they would come visit us in Chicago a lot. They'd come in for Christmas and stay for like a week or 2 weeks. And Slash was like a family member. He was a good friend, and I was the oldest kid, and I was a guitar player. So we always kind of bonded, and we would hang out. And I was visiting him in LA. I think this was around the earthquake, like 94. I was in the Northridge earthquake visiting Slash and Renee at the time.
Holy crap.
It's a whole other story, and it was insane. But at that time, Slash had this beautiful Guild acoustic that Guild made for him, right? I think they were going to maybe make it a Slash model or something like that. It's really amazing, like an ebony fretboard, just beautiful D52, dreadnought kind of thing. And I was playing it at his house all the time, and he was like, it was just after Christmas. He's like, I didn't really get you a Christmas present, did I? And I'm like, oh no, man, you don't have to do that. And he's like, you like that guitar? And I'm like, oh, I love this guitar. It's great. He's like, well, it's yours. Merry Christmas.
Wow.
So that was back in.
That's really nice, man.
Yeah, he's a beautiful guy. They ended up divorcing years later, and we lost touch, but we actually reconnected
on Facebook.
It's funny because we were always cool. We crossed paths a couple times because I moved to LA, and his guitar tech became my guitar tech for a minute, which was pretty cool because I knew this guy Adam. Like I knew him when I was a kid before anything happened with me, and then there was like this long period where I wasn't in touch with Slash after their divorce, and then I so Slash and I kind of reconnected a little bit years ago, but I was in Australia on this tour and with the Bees, and my buddy was like, "Hey, Guns N' Roses, this is 2 years ago. They're playing the huge soccer stadium. Like, and I like you're related to Slash, right?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, a long time ago, but man, I haven't talked to him in like 12 years or I don't know." And he's like, "Man, you should try to get a hold of him. We should go." And I was like, all right. So I didn't have his current number, and I just reached out to a guy that I knew a guy who worked with him that I knew, and I was like, "Hey man, if you want to reach out to Slash, I'm in Australia. I'm in Sydney too. I'd love to see him. No worries if you don't feel comfortable. We're on the beach in Manly Beach and on a day off in Sydney. I'm hanging on the beach. All of a sudden, my phone, I get a text on Viber from Slash.
That's so cool.
Yeah, dude, what do you like? I can't believe you're in Australia. You got to come to the show tonight. And he hooked me and like some of the B-52’s up in our band. And
that's really nice.
Wonderful. And I got to go back to his room. It's like they have all these levels of security with a band that big.
Yeah.
It's not like just like backstage. It's like backstage level 1, level 2, level 3. So his big, huge Samoan bodyguard guy came to grab me from the main backstage. And he's like, Slash just wants to hang with just you for a while. So we went back. We hung out probably like an hour after the show, just the two of us.
That's nice, man. So you got to connect. And it's always weird like that, too, because when you get divorced, it's always like you just feel like, I don't know if you've ever been divorced, but you just feel like there's sides.
Yeah, no, and he had a new wife.
Right.
And I think, the deal is like, okay, that's your old wife's life, family.
Yeah, right.
Which I totally understand.
Right, absolutely.
But yeah, we did reconnect, man, and we had an awesome time catching up.
That's great.
Now we're still in touch. We text each other like, "Get this, man. This is a trip." So we're both into pinball, and he got into pinball because of my dad. My dad always had pinball machines growing up, like for me growing up. And so when Slash would come visit us, he really got into pinball machines, and like he's a big collector actually now, and I'm still into pinball. Like, so every now and then I text him about like, "Hey man, I'm playing this cool new like Munsters pinball machine. You got to check it out, right?" So he's like, "Dude, you told me you were playing with American Idol, right?" And I'm like, yeah. He's like, "Man, I'm watching you. I'm in Manila right now watching you on TV." He was watching an Idol episode.
That's so cool.
Rebroadcasting, and he's like, it was so funny. He's like, "Oh man, you sound really good." And I'm like, "This is a trip." Like Slash is in Manila watching me TV. Like, this is weird.
Yeah, that is cool, man. Have you been to the pinball? What's that?
I'm sorry. I said we're back in touch, which is nice.
That's nice, man. That's really cool. Have you been to the Pinball Museum in Vegas?
No, I got to go.
It's really cool.
Well, pinball's a big Chicago thing.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, all the big pinball companies were out here. There's kind of only one left, Stern Pinball, and they're out here.
Was there one called Midway, maybe?
Yeah, Midway. Yeah, I believe they were Chicago-based too.
Yeah, I remember that.
Midway. But yeah.
Check out the Pinball Museum. It's like 15 minutes off the strip. It's small. It's really cool though. Every game you've ever played as a child is there. I mean, it's expensive as shit. It's not like a quarter. It'll cost you money, but it's worth it to go and just to walk around. I took pictures, sent them to my kids of games we used to play.
I probably spend $30 a week on pinball. Like that's kind of a little hobby of mine.
That's cool, man. It's better than cigarettes. Do you smoke?
I used to. I quit 17 years ago.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I used to smoke. It's horrible, man. That's the worst thing to do. Very cool.
That Guild is like one of my very prized guitars as well.
So you got the 66 Tele, the Guild D52 from early 90s, and what would be number 3?
I just started doing an endorsement thing with Collings guitars.
Oh, yeah. Did you deal with Mark?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm talking with him right now. It's funny. Very cool, man.
On the TV show, I've got 2 of theirs that I just acquired in the last couple of years. So there's like an OM2 that I've been using like a lot that I love. I think it's beautiful. It's a really great guitar.
Man, it's funny. I have heard so many people tell me that they love the I-35. Their version of the 335.
Play one of those, man. Because he was telling me like I should check him out. I've heard good things too. I would love to get my hands on one of those and play one. So I might go to the shop, play one, and then get in touch with Mark. Oh shit, I'm going to spend more money.
There you go. Everybody, I've talked to so many dudes that love that guitar. I mean, like I talked to a couple of guys. That's all they have. They've got like two of them. They don't even have, they don't want a Gibson 335. They've got that. So for whatever that's worth, man.
Yeah, cool.
Desert Island Discs, Greg, top three.
Yeah. First of all, wouldn't it suck being on a desert island? Like that would just suck. Like
it would suck.
And then someone's like, "Oh yeah, I can only bring 3 CDs." Like, oh, that'd be the worst.
I know, but I somehow think your priority list would be different. Like music may not come in first.
Yeah. So like, I think this answer would probably change day by day.
Oh, absolutely. No, just a knee jerk for right now.
Yeah. Like, and I have a pretty eclectic, wide array of musical tastes, and I do listen to a lot of music, but I'm going to say right now, the band Talk Talk Laughing Stock, which is a really seminal record, huge record for me. And also because Mark Hollis, the singer and the songwriter, the main guy from the band, he just passed away recently. And they were a pop band, with songs like It's My Life. And they were like kind of this new wave, English kind of synthy pop, pop group of the 80s. They took a huge left turn in like 89 and released an album called Spirit of Eden. And then after that, Laughing Stock. And these records were not pop at all. They're really very moody, organic, very sparse, kind of like Radiohead before Radiohead, to be honest.
Interesting.
In some ways. And they're very hugely influential on me as a writer. Like I love that record, and because Mark Hollis just passed away, he's really on my mind these days. And so that would be one record, Laughing Stock by Talk Talk. I think I would just have to bring the Bach Lute Suite.
I was going to say Bach, man.
Yeah,
your boy Bach.
John Williams has this recording of the Lute Suites and other Bach for guitar pieces that have been transcribed with guitar. That's just amazing. I mean, he's such a technically flawless player, and there's something about his performances that are so beautiful. So I think I would have to have that because, again, I never get tired of listening to Bach. It's a thing that all those, like the fugues and the preludes, like they're these lines intertwining. God, now I sound like Spinal Tap, like Nigel or something. But really, like these melodies that are working themselves out, and the counterpoint that's involved with those, it keeps my brain occupied in a way that I can't describe. So I think I would have to have that. Although some of that music is kind of in me anyway, and I think I could probably play it out in my head, but I would want that too. And I'm just going to throw this one out there because I love this band. I love this record, and people are going to think it's cheesy, but I would need to have fun every now and then on this island. So I'm going to bring Huey Lewis and the News Sports.
Very cool, man.
Because those songs are incredible, and I love Huey, and I've met Huey before, and I love that record, and I would probably want that around.
you know what, man? I got to introduce you to that guy, Steph. He plays for Huey. There's like a bunch of Steph Burns connections here.
Oh, Steph, right. Oh, Steph. I know Steph.
Okay.
Anyway, when I was with Felder, we did a gig with Huey. Okay. So that's Steph.
Yeah.
Right.
He's got great hair. He's like super vascular.
Dude.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, I didn't know Steph's last name. I just remember.
Okay, I had a funny feeling. I said, "Man, I'm surprised you didn't know him," but I'm glad you did. Yeah, because
we met on this gig that Felder did. We opened for Huey, and he is a monster player.
Oh, totally.
Very inspiring.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I was trying to get in Huey's band really bad because I know John Pierce, the bass player, and Huey doesn't. But Steph would sub that gig out every now and then because of that Italian artist, right?
Right, Vasco, right.
So he would sub it out from time to time. And I remember John Pierce, I went to see Huey play somewhere here in the Midwest, and John brings me back afterwards to meet Huey. And at the time I was playing with Walsh, and John's like, "Hey, Hugh," or Lou, he called him Lou, which I thought was really funny. Like, he's like, "Lou, this is Greg. He plays with Joe Walsh now." And I remember Huey goes, he's like, "Oh man, we need a guy like this in the band. Look at this guy. He's young. He's playing with Joe Walsh." He's like, "Listen, man, I can't pay you that Joe Walsh money." And I'm like, I think I really said, like, Huey, like you could pay me like $5 and I would do the gig. And he's like, "I like this guy." Nothing ever came of it, of course, but like, I don't know. It's funny. Like I have this really eclectic taste. For some reason, I got a soft spot for Huey Lewis and News. I think it's a brilliant. I think he was awesome. And that dude Steph, man, plays his ass.
He's really a good player. It's a very small world, man, of musicians, especially guitar players. It's like, 2 degrees of separation for anybody at most, it seems like.
Sure, right. By the way, I could add about like 150 other records to that list that have nothing to do with any of those records I mentioned. So, but that's just today what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Yeah, this has to be knee jerk. So 3 questions, man, and then best decision you ever made.
And this is no diss on the band that I quit, but when I quit the Goo Goo Dolls in 2006, it was the best decision I ever made because, and again, it's nothing against them. It was more that was like obviously the band that brought me to LA. It was a big gig. I had toured with them for 4 years. I played on a few records. It was a big part of my career, huge part, like real big start to my, say, professional career. But it was at a kind of like a turning point where we just finished working on this record. They were about to release it. We were about to go on tour again for 2 years. Really,
say a year and a half, 2 years. Yeah.
And I was doing a lot of session work at the time. Really in large part thanks to Johnny and them, like giving me a break. Like I started working with Rob Cavallo because he produced Goo Goo Doll records, and Johnny kind of sort of put me in the ball game with that. And then Rob was hiring me to do some other stuff, and I was also doing sessions with my buddy John Fields. So I was doing a decent amount of session work. And I kind of thought, okay, it's 2006. Like, if I keep going with this gig, this is going to be the rest of my career. I'm going to be the Goo Goo Dolls guitar player for the rest of my life. And that's kind of where I was at. I was feeling like, and that wouldn't be a bad thing. That would be a cool thing in a lot of ways. But I wasn't a member of the band. I was a hired gun.
Right. It
was a way of thinking for me. Like I'd always been a member of bands for the most part, And I'm like, okay, well, I'm just doing this for a salary, and you guys could fire me at any time. Like if I get so wrapped up in this gig and that's all I ever do, I may never recover. You know what I mean? Like, I just thought, you know what? This is time for me to like kind of take a chance on myself, leave this gig, which was hard to do because it wasn't like I had this big other gig ready to go. I felt like if I didn't make that move then, that I would have been disappointed with myself. And it would have been different. Like if they said, hey man, we're going to make you a band member and cut you in and the whole thing, like, then yeah, I probably would have gone along with it. Cause it's like, what a great opportunity that would be. But, I figured it was time for me to see what else I could accomplish. And, it was hard to do. There was a little slow point there for a minute, but then things picked up pretty quickly. And honestly, if you think about it, if I had made that decision, I wouldn't have played with Joe Walsh. I wouldn't have done that French gig I did. I wouldn't be playing with the B-52’s. I wouldn't be doing this American Idol thing. Like, all of that stuff. None of that would have happened had I stayed on that gig. So,
but you got to get credit because you followed, you had a board of directors meeting with yourself and you said, man, in the end, this is not where I want to be. It's good. And that's a tough thing to do when you're getting paid well.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I had a mortgage. I had bought a house. Like I had a girlfriend.
In LA.
Yeah. And I had a girlfriend, and at the time, like, I was supporting her, and her mother became ill and couldn't work.
Oh my God.
Mother too. And it was a pretty, I had some serious life. Like we weren't married, but it was like a marriage.
You still together?
No.
So it was like a marriage.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, totally. So I was taking a risk. There was no question. And I didn't have any like real LA presence other than the sessions I was doing. It wasn't like I had been, going up through the scene in LA and doing like local gigs. Like, I don't think I had ever played a local gig in LA. Yeah. Like I played Staples Center, like with Goo Goo Dolls opening up for Bon Jovi or something. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
So I didn't really have like a connection to the LA business. So it was a risk, but in hindsight, I really feel like it was one of the best decisions I ever made.
Good for you. Congratulations. I'm glad you made it. The tough decisions are though always the good ones, man.
Yeah, you got to take a chance, and it could have gone south, and I could have been washed up and had to move, tail between my legs back to Chicago like a year later. But it worked out. I continued to work for another 13 years now since I left. So
hold on, you got to realize that one thing leads to another. You got to put yourself out there. You got to be willing to take risk. There you go.
Yeah, sure. You really do. You really do.
Fun question. You have any hobbies or interests outside of music, Greg?
Yeah, we kind of touched on like pinball is like a thing I'm kind of into again. It's fun. I'm not all that good at it, but I like it.
It's tons of fun.
Yeah. And okay, sports, like I'm a big sports fan. I don't really talk about it much, but like I I read a lot of sports articles. I don't know why. It's just this thing I do. It's kind of like my thing that has nothing to do with music or art.
That's great.
Yeah. So I probably could like have my own sports podcast. I really say this with humility, but I have a lot of unnecessary sports knowledge, like of the main sports, like, NBA, football, NFL, and MLB, baseball, stuff like that. So
one of my kids, my younger son's like that. He's just so passionate about it, man. So it's a great outlet, man. It's so healthy. It's positive. It's camaraderie. You watch games with buddies.
I go to games. I go to Bulls games all the time. I go to Cubs games out here in Chicago. I do all that stuff.
That's very cool. All right. And the last question, what has been, Greg, the biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years? And how much of that change has been intentional and how much is just a factor of aging?
I think there are two big things. Last 10 years in particular, I have to say that I think I've become a more compassionate person. So I had a dog for 10 years. She just passed away.
Man, I'm so sorry because I've had
thank you.
many.
Her name was Stella, and I wasn't like an animal.
Wait a minute. Her name was Stella?
Yeah.
Dude, that was the name of one of my last two dogs that passed.
Oh man. Yeah. I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah. That's heavy shit, man.
Yeah. I can't even begin to tell you like how much Stella meant to me. She passed at the end of August, just this last year. And I was in the middle of this B-52’s touring, and then she was old. My ex-girlfriend found her as a stray dog in LA, literally dodging cars. And this poor little thing, she's just this sweet little terrier. So she was probably like 5 or 6 at that time. And
so she lived a great life.
She did. She probably was about 16 or 17.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
But this poor little dog, who was a stray dog for quite some time, for sure. Right as my ex and I broke up, Stella came into my life. Like my ex found her, and we were going through our breakup. So like which was going to be a really, really challenging time for me. And it was. I had Stella in my life, and she made everything better. She kind of like, I saved Stella and she kind of saved me too, really.
Very cool, man.
Yeah. And it was hard. Like I never wanted a dog or anything. Like I'm a single touring musician now, and like I'm on the road. It was challenging, right? Having to juggle all this, and I didn't know how to do it. But like I just loved Stella like instantly so much. And having her in my life really changed me in a way. I'm a vegan now. I've been a vegan for over 3 years. And I've been a vegetarian for like almost 6 years. And most of that has to do with how I've become like a real animal rights person. And also I'm an environmentalist, and there's a huge connection to veganism and environmentalism that
sure.
a lot of people don't know about, but and health reasons. But Stella really changed me. I learned that I could love this. She was a soul, she's not a person. She doesn't have the intelligence of a person, like evolution wise.
And yet in some ways so much smarter than some people.
Our connection to me, like what I learned is that, that kind of love is as real as any kind of love. And for me, it was the most meaningful relationship I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds kind of funny, and people are like, "Oh, so sorry you lost your dog." Like I can't. I can't even tell you. Like,
I know exactly how
I'm doing. I mean, it's been 7 months since she passed away, and I'm doing so much better with it now. I'm going through those phases of grieving and all that. But I was a real wreck, and I was in the middle of this tour when it was going on, and it was very challenging for me. And I also lost some dear friends these last couple of years.
Wow.
Paul, like a couple of people I mentioned that we were talking about, Paul Gordon, the keyboard player from the B-52’s that got me on board, he passed away recently, a couple of years ago. And my other friend George, who was the bass player in Joe Walsh, he passed away, within the last 2 years as well. And these are all guys in their, early to mid 50s. And so there's been a lot of that going on in my life lately. And then passing like people that I really cared about, souls that I cared about. And I think having experienced that like I never have before in my life has made me appreciate what I have, and the fact that we're not here forever, and has really put things into perspective. So I think these last 10 years I'm definitely more reflective, more compassionate, and trying to live in the moment more. And I would say that that's probably the biggest change in me.
Man, well, I'm so sorry for your loss for your dog and your friends, man. And
we go through these things. It's a part of it, and there's no, but I don't regret these things, because these are people I really care about. And the only way you get to feel that kind of pain is by, loving them so much. The only way that happens. You think you'll
be getting another dog?
I'd really like to at some point, It's funny because Stella just jumped into my life.
So you're waiting maybe for something else like that.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. And Stella was such a unique little dog. She didn't like other dogs. She hated other dogs. She didn't like other people. She liked me. She was a very unique little animal. And I know she's still in my heart. And so I think I would compare it. But I think I would love to. I mean, really, if I had my druthers, I'd like to have a place on a farm somewhere with tons of animals and take care of them. That would be an amazing thing to be able to do. And I may be able to do that someday.
Yeah. You see that on Facebook once in a while. There was recently, it's probably older, but I've seen it a few times, with this woman who's got literally maybe hundreds of dogs in this giant acreage,
Isn't that awesome?
And then I saw this guy in Greece. Apparently in Greece, there's dogs all over the place, and people leave puppies in boxes, cardboard boxes, in a field somewhere. So he goes around every day, finding these boxes of puppies, rescuing them, bring them to his kind of shelter and stuff like that. It's crazy, man.
Yeah. If there's anything I could do in that capacity, I would love to, but I think I will have another dog someday. Yeah.
Good, man. Listen, man, I really appreciate your time. I'm really glad we finally got to do this after missing each other for a little bit. Let me tell people where to find you and where to check you out. It's Greg Suran, Suran. First of all, check out his on Bandcamp. He's got 2 records, actually. He's got Augmentation, and then he's got a cool ambient record there as well. And you can find him at bandcamp.gregsuran.com. And again, it's Greg Suran, Suran. He's also on Instagram. You can follow him on there at G Suran Rap. It's GSuranWrap. And check him out on American Idol, whether you're in the Philippines or in your house. And the B-52’s, man. When is the tour start?
Yeah. So looks like we're gonna be doing a European run, parts of June and July, and then there's definitely going to be a statewide tour. Rest of July, probably through the end of the year. Probably it's looking like they're still putting it together. But
awesome, yeah. You guys coming down here?
I'm sure. Yeah, we'll have to hook up, man.
Dude. Absolutely, man, for sure. Absolutely,
it's super fun. Yeah.
Listen, thank you for everything. I really appreciate it. Let me know if I could ever help you. And everybody support Greg's music and listen to his record Augmentation and his ambient record. They're both on streaming services on his Bandcamp, and check him out on Instagram and go say hello to him at the B-52 show, or don't say hello to him at American Idol. But listen, man, thank you for everything. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Craig. It was really fun.
Great. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Thanks again to Greg Suran for spending time with us. I appreciate it. And support Greg and listen to him and check his music out at Augmentation is the name of the CD at Greg on Bandcamp at Greg Suran. And make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get on our newsletter list so you and I can connect. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice. So choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.